We'll probably do it twice, just to make sure that we got it. Are y'all ready? Yeah. Okay. Y'all know what we're going to say. Thank you, Governor Abbott, for fighting for kids. One. Wait, where are we looking? Right there?
The cameras are out there.
Okay. Okay, look at the audience. Ready? Here we go. This is our practice round. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Governor Abbott, for fighting for our kids.
Okay, let's say, all right, let's do one more and say, thank you, Governor Abbott, for education savings accounts. All right. Can we do that? You can do it. Y'all can do it. Ready?
Yeah, we got it. We got it.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Governor Abbott, for educational savings accounts.
One more time, Leanne. Yeah.
There you go. You get to be so official. There you go. There you go. Do you want to hold that for me? Thank you.
Let's figure this out.
Gosh, oh my goodness. Do you want to hold this?
You're a mom. You can do it all.
There you go.
I knew you would.
Look, you're on the microphone. You guys want to hold it and speak into it? No?
No.
No?
Yeah.
I was like, no, now.
You want to?
Hello.
Here you go.
Hello.
Do it again. Are you ready? Thank you, Governor Abbott, for fighting for kids. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Governor Abbott, for fighting for kids. Yes. Smile.
Okay. We get it. All right, let's do it with the microphone. We're here for y'all, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Yes, right?
Check.
Y'all traveled in from Port Arthur and Harlingen.
Check.
Thank you, guys. Okay. Thank you, Governor Abbott, for education savings account.
Okay.
Ready? 1,
1.
2, 3.
Thank you, Governor Abbott, for educational savings account.
They count.
Nailed it. Killed it. Yeah, girl. Hit me one more time. You missed my hand. You got it. Yes. Good job, buddy. All right.
Thank you. Let's get started.
All right.
Just glue these on. All right, start whenever you want. Whenever you're ready. Right here.
Where's Rob? Where's Rob and Colleen? My panelists are split up. Oh. Okay. Come up here. Where's Rob? I know you're somewhere. Come up here so I can call, when I call you up. I'm gonna call you up. I got you. You got the memo. Right on top. Just sit down, right? I'll call you up when I introduce you and all the great work that you do. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here with the Parent Empowerment Coalition as we monitor the House Public Education Committee hearing on the implementation of education savings accounts. We have so many coalition members here, parents, and patriots who realize the need to empower every single parent across the state of Texas with education freedom with education savings accounts. You know, one of the great things about this mission, and what I'm so excited about with our first panel that I'll call up in just a second, is that the love of every single parent for their child, that transcends race, zip code, the money in your bank account, and any other deciding factor in a person's life. I vividly remember that moment that I held my first child. For all the parents in here, I know y'all remember that too. That lightning strike of love, that desire, that need to protect that baby, to provide for them, and to prepare them to launch into the future, to be happy, successful, thriving adults that enjoy the freedoms that we do today. That is why the parent empowerment movement has spread all across Texas. Parents from public schools, teachers from public schools, parents in private schools, homeschool, we've all locked arms together because we believe in parents' fundamental right to direct their child's education. We believe in every single parent who knows and loves their child best. And we believe in the 4 pillars of parent empowerment. If you're new, we'll go through those. The very first pillar of parent empowerment that we all believe in is transparency. Every single parent, regardless of if they choose their local public school, a private school, homeschool, has a right to know what their child is learning and why. Every single parent deserves the right, has the right to say, I don't want my child exposed to that. If you're like me and you're on social media or just pay attention to the news, you see constantly this divisive nature that's being pushed into our classrooms. Oppressed versus the oppressor, victim versus the victimizer. Heck, just this weekend, we saw a leader from the teachers union stand up at a presidential rally talking about how she went into teaching because she knew it was the perfect place to push for social justice. Every single parent across Texas has the right to know what their child is being taught and why it's being taught. Transparency is number 1. The second pillar of parent empowerment that we all believe in is quality. Every single child, regardless of where they go to school, deserves access to a high-quality education. Now, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, the commissioner of TEA testified, and he said the quiet part out loud, y'all. He acknowledged that they did an internal audit on our public school system and found that just 19% of the curriculum in our classrooms is on grade level. 19%. The soft bigotry of low expectations that is plaguing an entire system, that is stifling the potential of an entire generation, is wrong. And that is why parents and teachers and great leaders have united to demand that every single child has the opportunity to attend whatever learning environment will ensure that they get a high quality education. Let's look at another stat. Not just the curriculum on grade level, 50% of kids in Texas public schools cannot read on grade level, y'all. We know that if a child doesn't read on grade level by the time they reach 3rd grade, there is a 97% guarantee they will never catch up. We are condemning children to a life of low expectations, and it's wrong. And that's why the parent empowerment movement has spread across Texas, because we believe that every child deserves access to a high quality education. So number 1 is transparency, number 2 is quality, and number 3 is respect. Parents across Texas deserve the respect from whatever educational provider is educating their child. They deserve the respect that they are the ultimate decision maker. You know, far too many times I have parents come up to me. In fact, one of our panelists, Ms. Hillary Hicklin, that's going to join us in a moment, come up to me and share stories about just completely disregarding a parent's concerns, a lack of respect. Hillary's mission occurred when her child's close friend was being groomed by 3 teachers in the public school to transition. I had a mom in Tyler, Texas that came up to me that was talking about something that was going on in her child's classroom. And this is really what happens to a lot of parents. This is why, y'all, when we see these parents, their hair's on fire, they're being drug out of school board meetings, their mic's being cut off, they're not allowed to read from the pornographic books. This is what happens. They didn't show up at the school board meeting that's televised to blow up their reputation. They showed up because they were ignored and there was no respect. What happened was mom or dad went and knocked on that teacher's door or sent her an email and said, excuse me, I'm not okay with the fact that my child is being bullied to the point of suicidal ideations. I'm not okay with the fact that my child is not learning to read via phonics. I'm not okay that my child's IEP is not being met. I don't know what it is, but a mom or dad went and said, excuse me, I'm not okay with this. And there was no resolution. They were dismissed. And then they show up at the principal's office. Same conversation. Same lack of respect. And then if you're like the mom in Tyler, Texas, you go to the superintendent and you say, excuse me, superintendent, I'm not okay with what's going on. And with tears streaming down her face, she tells me that he looks at her and says, if you don't like it, then go somewhere else. She says, I can't go somewhere else. I can't go without an education savings account. I can't afford to leave. So the first 3 pillars of parent empowerment that we all believe in, that millions of parents have locked arms about: transparency, quality, respect. And the 4th pillar is choice. If at any point in any parent's journey with their child that a parent is not given transparency, quality, respect, and choice, or they must be given the choice of where to send their child to school. And this is why you're going to hear today from parents that have gotten involved, school board leaders, mothers fighting against the inappropriate materials. You're also going to hear from experts from TSU and Rice University who just put out the Texas 24 trends that show that empowering parents with education savings accounts is wildly supported by all demographics. Well, except for one, white liberals, which is no surprise. That elitist, I know better than you mentality, which we hear time and time again. So the 4 pillars of parent empowerment that we all believe in that's crisscross the state of Texas: transparency, quality, respect, and choice. And that is why I've got 3 incredible parents that I'm going to invite up on this stage from the public school system, from public and private school system, and a parent who decided to start her own organization to help parents navigate this system over a decade ago. If you'll please welcome Ms. Colleen Dipple, founder of Families Empowered. Families Empowered. Families Empowered has been serving parents across the state of Texas so well, in fact, you're in the middle, so well, in fact, that she has been asked to bring Families Empowered to Arizona and Florida. And we'll get into why, but as we all know, Arizona and Florida are leading the country both in academic performance and empowering parents with choices. Thank you for being here, Colleen. Next, I'm going to invite up Mrs. Hillary Hicklin. Some of you may recognize Hillary as a mom that has traipsed the halls of the Capitol, has begged and pleaded legislators to help get incredibly explicit pornographic images out of our libraries, fighting the HB 900 battle, and realizing that empowering parents with choice is the only way to course correct the system that continues to strong arm parents. Please welcome Ms. Hillary Hicklin. And finally, I'd like to bring up Mr. Rob McClellan, a trustee at a Central Texas school district. And Rob has really, he's hit the hornet's nest, is I guess the best way I'd say it. Rob and a group of parents from his local school district said, we've had enough. We've had enough of the inappropriate materials in our libraries. We've had enough of the DEI or the privilege walks or this cultural indoctrination that has seeped into our classrooms. They banded together. They formed a coalition of parents to run for the school boards to win, and now they are leading the state in pushing back against those leftist ideologies, Title IX, all of this nonsense in the schools, and ensuring that they are protecting his public school district to remain at the top of Texas rankings. Please welcome Mr. Rob McClellan. All right, Colleen, I'm going to start with talking to you a little bit about Families Empowered and what was the impetus for starting your wonderful organization that serves parents in Texas, but now also in Arizona and Florida.
Great. I think you're on. I'm on. You can all hear me. I'll use a teacher voice. So first of all, thank you for having me. Thanks to you all for being here and for caring about this issue. It's really important. It's very consequential. And I'm grateful to be here. So I co-founded Families Empowered in Texas 15 years ago. We've served actually over 105,000 Texas parents who want school options. So I'm here to tell you the polls are real. I founded Families Empowered because I'm a former Texas public school teacher. I'm certified in the state of Texas. I have a master's in education leadership. And most importantly, I'm a mother to 2 children who are now teens. They're lovely. Lucky me. Yes, they're great. And as a former public school teacher, I thought I really knew what I wanted. I made a very consequential decision for my family. My husband and I bought a home to be zoned to a certain school. We thought, and it was the actually biggest financial decision we probably made. And we thought we had it, right? I knew the data. I understand the scoring. I really felt I had done my research. And then I had this beautiful little boy who's now 19. He was 5, and I was looking for a kindergarten, and I went to my local school. And by the way, I live in a great district, and the principal wouldn't give me a tour of the school at all. Like, wouldn't let me tour the school and look at the classroom. And what she said was, well, we're an A-rated school. And I was like, that's not what I'm interested. Like, yes, that's great. I'm really interested in what is happening in the school, right? So what is your approach to reading acquisition? What is your value add? What are the gains that kids are making here? What's happening on a day-to-day basis? I want to get my eyes on those rooms. And when I got turned away, my husband was on his way to do the tour. I said, turn the car around. She won't give us a tour. We need to look for options. And then I actually struggled. And what I realized, I taught in a Title I school. I thought, if I'm struggling to find options, what is the experience of someone who doesn't have the benefit of time, who doesn't have a master's degree in education, who had actually a bad experience at school themselves, maybe didn't graduate from high school. The parents I taught, what is their experience? And I thought, and at the same time, this was happening 15 years ago, the charter schools were just they had these massive wait lists. And I went to 2 charter school founders and said, what do you do for families who don't get in? And they just said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, where do they go? They said, we don't know. And I had this moment where I thought, well, maybe I'm not unique. Maybe there are other parents struggling, and maybe they need a little help. And so that year, we, as in my co-founder and board chair, we said, well, maybe with this project, we can help families looking for schools. We can give them accurate, actionable information to make a good, informed decision. That first summer, we had 6,000 families in Houston, Texas alone opt in to our service at Families Empowered. And someone just said, wow. And we had a wow moment where we thought, this isn't a unique issue. This is a universal issue. And the reason we know now, 15 years later, that it's universal is because Mandy said something important. Because choosing a school is an act of love for a parent. It is an act of love. It is an important decision that you don't make every day. It's not like buying toothpaste on Amazon. And parents take it very seriously. They're capable of making good decisions, but sometimes they need a little help. And so I started Families Empowered because this was a personal problem I was trying to solve. And I thought that maybe other people had the same problem. Turns out 105,000 families in Texas needed that help. So that's our story.
Thank you for serving the parents of Texas. Incredibly important. And thank you for being a part, Family is Empowered, of the Parent Empowerment Coalition that really something that we can get into later, but your parent engagement specialists. Colleen has an incredible group of parents and people that you just can call. Mm-hmm. Yes. They're called the parent engagement specialists so that every parent has access to an individual. Thank you for doing that. Hillary, so can you share with everyone kind of what occurred in your Central Texas, pretty conservative district that really opened your eyes to some of the problems in the classroom, some of the indoctrination that was flowing in when everyone said, no, that can't happen, your personal experience, and then how you took that and really became an advocate for parents all across your district in Texas?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to TPPF because, it's a little bit surreal right now because just 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, I'm sitting in the audience recognizing that I've got to learn about policy and the legislative process, and I didn't know where to go. I found TPPF, and it was incredibly helpful to me, and so it's crazy that here I am sitting on a panel myself. Anyway, so I'm so grateful to be here and grateful for everyone that's here just listening and gaining insight and any kind of direction to put into action, because that's really what it's about. For me, it went from recognizing that public school was not the best choice for my family. When my husband and I knew that raising kids is the most important thing we're ever going to do, and you want to get it right, and education is such an important piece of that. We decided that public school was where we were going to start, and I decided that I was going to be one of those moms that's in the PTA and the broom mom and really engaged. And so I always was. For my kids' elementary school, for the most part, it was great. But that transition from elementary school to middle school was like night and day. My daughter entered middle school or junior high, 6th grade, and it was a hyper-sexualized environment, not just from her peers, but also the teachers were just emphasizing issues that were really contradictory to our family values, and really not the place of it was usurping my place as a parent, and well beyond the scope of academics. And so my alarm bells were kind of on high alert already, and we began to make plans for alternatives for my family, and that's what we did for the next year. So I almost went from, okay, we have a problem, let's make sure our kids and our family are okay. And then one day I had just an encounter with a display. Some other parents shared this with me. It was essentially it was the week before school started that I became aware of a book display in the public school junior high library. So 11-year-olds celebrating banned books. And these books were not the classics that people like to say are, being banned, which first of all, no book has been banned in our country, since the 60s. So that's totally, misnomer. But they were books that were completely inappropriate. And by any standard, legal standard, is not just my personal opinion. And I was so appalled that then it was like a light bulb moment that made me think, this is beyond just me and my family. I can't just build a wall around my family and my kids are okay, but this is my community. This is the future of our community, of our state, and well beyond. You just don't know the ripple effects of this. And so seeing that I had to get involved, I started to voice my opinions to the administration, and then speaking before the school board. And I was really disappointed to see that the adults in positions of power and authority were not acting in a place of courage to protect and defend our children. And so that's what sent me to Austin.
Thank you for sharing that story, and thank you for getting involved in what the parent empowerment movement is back. It's about returning that power back to parents who have children who are concerned about the future of Texas and our country. Rob.
Hi, Mandy.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
So recently, you've made headlines about, well, let's start with where it started. You recognized in your school district, a group of parents, y'all recognized that things weren't really going the way that you wanted it to.
That's right. Yep.
So you banded together, locked arms, decided to run for school board.
That's right.
And a group of you took that on to say, we're going to fight for our kids in our public schools. We've had enough of the nonsense. Let's go. And it worked.
It did.
Right. Because we're on the side of 90% of parents, 99% of parents. And then once you got into being a school board trustee, you maybe had your eyes opened. You were enlightened as to how some of the shenanigans actually does occur across Texas. Yeah. And so we just recently did a podcast that kind of in certain circles went viral, where you did what I call, you said the quiet part out loud. You talked about an experience when you went to a conference with the Texas Association of School Boards and heard some really, really terrible things about how to treat teachers. Would you tell our audience a little bit about your path to that?
Sure.
And what you heard and how they can fight back? Because more and more trustees, I know you said that more trustees have reached out to you.
Many of them, yeah.
And many have reached out to me as well. And so how can they get involved? What happened? How do they push back?
Yeah, sure. Mandy, thanks for having me today. First, I have to do the disclaimer thing, right? Yes. So I'm Rob. I'm here on my personal capacity today, so nothing I say reflects any position of the district in which I serve. So thanks for having me today. My wife just stepped in. She's my better half. Her and I are parents to two kids. We're both products of the public school system, both in secondary education all the way up through higher education. We moved to the community we live in specifically because the school district performs so well, which is a common theme we've had up here, right? The current Texas version of school choice, right? You can move to areas with high-performing school districts. A lot of parents today have that option, although there are many that do not. And so, I'm on year 2 as an elected official governing our public schools. It has been an interesting journey to basically, in our community, over the course of the last 4 years, we've completely changed the school leadership in our community. And all of them are parents, right? And I think those, and I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast with you, Mandy, that demographic is a critical component to engage in what we're doing from a parent empowerment standpoint. We're talking about opportunities in different areas on this panel. For me, my family and I, we're digging in deep to raise the bar in public education. Now, fortunately, the district I'm in, the bar is already really, really high. Our district is awesome. And it's awesome because there's a lot of teachers, administrators, and previous school board trustees that have put a lot into that. My job is to continue to keep it moving forward for our district and for our community. Okay, so let's get to your question. As I've got involved with the system, I've identified, this is nothing pertinent to my district or anything in specific, that there are some real strong forces at play that are trying to get us to do things a certain way. And that way is not Chapter 11 of the Education Code, which is, as we know, that's the school board trustees kind of a statute and what you do. Doesn't talk a whole lot about what you don't do, but it does tell you what you do. Well, there are sure a lot of people that want to tell me what not to do. And as I'm engaging in those conversations, it's rarely manifest that, well, don't do this because it hurts kids. It's rarely what I hear. It's don't do this because it may deviate from previously established courses of action that have been established long before me. So that manifests into a theme that sometimes gets exacerbated into what happened at a recent conference that I was in, into where there was, in a session that I was in, there was a point in which the speaker was advocating for very unethical things, up to including using compensation as a means to influence how our teachers would vote. That is absolutely asinine. Right? Let's just be honest. It's asinine, it's inappropriate, it's unethical, it's immoral. I got up and walked out of that session. Now, that theme is not indicative let me be clear, of what the Texas Association of School Boards has ever told us or me or whatever it is. So I got to be super clear about that. But I'm sitting in a room of 100 elected officials, and this is what we're talking about? Like, come on now, right? That's not what we should be talking about, right? And I'm happy to bring light to this, but I also don't want to take away from the focus from a parent empowerment standpoint is that we as parents need to be involved and engaging at all facets within our education system, up to including goals to try to strengthen our public education system. That's what it has to do. We're going to talk a lot about choice, ESAs, all that kind of good stuff. But those kids that were up here earlier that are making noise over there, God bless them, that's what this is about. This is all for them and their future and their opportunity. And we have cloudy the waters with rhetoric, politics, and that's all got to go.
Thank you for shining light. And that's right. It's about these kids. So before a lot of these kids walked out before we went live streaming, and we've got families that at their own expense came in from Harlingen, Port Arthur, Waller. I mean, parents and their children are demanding they need respect, whether it's they're choosing a high quality public school or whether they need that other option. And so, Rob, you're exactly correct. And that's really why this has swept the state. Again, it's all parents saying, we got to do this for our kids. It's about our kids. It's about those kids. It's about all of our kids, all of your kids, the next generation of Texas, ensuring that they have a great education and are prepared to launch and protect the freedoms and live the incredible life that the Texas Miracle has given to us. So thank you for being here. Colleen, I would love to ask you to share with us a story about a family or two that you all have helped. Maybe share with us a great story that will lift people up about why having Families Empowered help give information about schools, and maybe one that really explains why providing choices or providing the opportunity for a parent to feel empowered if they do need to walk into their public school and say, we're not doing that with my child.
Yeah, I can do that. So as I said, we've served over 105,000 families. That's about 137,000 children, because not every parent just has one child they're looking for. And just to give you a sense of the demographics of the families we serve, we provide free bilingual service to families. So there's no charge for parents to work with us, and we meet parents where they are, right? So we do everything from, as you said, we have a call center. We run the largest bilingual K-12 call center. Well, I think the only one in Texas dedicated to K-12 school navigating, and I think the largest in the United States right now. We're really proud of that. We're a group of mostly moms and some former educators. We're sort of the little engine that could. And so we are meeting parents through our call center. We made 80,000 phone calls last year to Texas parents. We sent 680,000 emails, but we also host fairs and events, so person-to-person events in communities where we connect families with schools. And so we are talking to parents and listening to parents. We don't put our thumb on the scale of what parents ought to choose. So we partner with schools so that we will have diverse schools to choose from. Our largest school partner right now is Fort Worth ISD. We also work with Houston ISD, Austin ISD, San Antonio ISD, smaller districts. So we love districts that are open to really kind of either through enrollment choices and or choice programs, magnet schools. We work with charter schools, private schools, homeschool. We don't take a position on what is best for other people's children. But we hear from families, we help them navigate their choices and then understand the different applications. I just want to give you, when we say navigation, that's what we mean. We're kind of like brokers in this marketplace of school choice. So I can think about, I'll give you two examples of parents we've helped. One is a mom in Houston who had her child at a public elementary school. The child was struggling. For a lot of the reasons, middle school is a really interesting place. For a lot of the reasons you described, just not good fit, kid was being bullied, the curriculum seemed really weak. We helped this mom consider multiple options, and she chose a a charter school, which is a public school of choice, and she chose a school called Etoile. It's a small charter school. It's what I would call mom and pop. She had a great middle school experience there. We have her on video, and she'll say, though, beyond finding and choosing that school and the support we gave her to understand how to apply, what we gave her was hope. She felt she was not alone in this decision. This is not, I said it before, I'll say it again, it's not like buying toothpaste on Amazon where if you don't get the right one, you toss it. It's a very stressful decision because we love our children so much, right? And she didn't have the benefit of moving. So she lived in a pretty poor part of town. So we helped her figure that. It was a great experience. She ended up going back to an HISD high school, but she used the magnet system. So she has used multiple schools. That's the ideal experience. And when she applied to high school, she really didn't need a lot of hand-holding because she really had the muscle memory to think about the timelines and the questions. So that's a great example. With another parent, on the flip side, this is an example of why some parents can't stay in the school they're in. We have a dad who was at an event and actually was one that left me speechless, which is rare because I can talk to anybody. I'm pretty extroverted. His son had been beaten in school by fellow students, beaten so badly that he had some neurological damage and was terrified. And so for this father, he was really struggling. It was a dad. I mean, and by the way, the majority of folks we serve end up being women because women just make these decisions. And so God bless you for going on the school board. But so this father was think about it. I know if my son my child was beaten in school, my husband would probably have a hard time managing it. And this man did what you did. He was looking for choices. It was really tough. And so that was actually a really difficult position because he couldn't move, low income, he had multiple kids, and he would not send his child back into that school for the obvious reasons. And this is why we're really passionate about an ESA, because for that parent, he needed another tool in his toolbox to provide really specialized, safe programming. And so that's our bad story. Like we really had no options. And he was adamant he was not sending his kid back and he couldn't move. So again, the parents who want options, they're not bad people. They don't hate public schools. They really just love their children. So yeah, those are stories.
Well, thank you for sharing those stories. Yeah. And that I hear those a lot. We've talked about that. We walk away with the tears of mothers on our shoulders because if you can't pick up and move to an excellent public school district, if you can't, only 3% of kids go to magnet schools. So I can only imagine that young lady, the public charter school prepared her and she was able to be selected because 75% of kids are not selected who apply to the magnet school system. So that's, I appreciate you sharing that. It is heartbreaking, and it really is why we're all advocating for those kids that it's just not the right fit. The one-size-fits-all system. Our kids, we love them, and that love transcends race, zip code, the street you live on, and everything. Well, thank you for sharing that story, as heartbreaking as it is. Hillary, when you started to push back against these inappropriate materials that you saw in the classrooms. I love the way that you phrased it. You can protect your kids. I feel the same way. I love the public charter school that I send my children to. And that's really why I am so passionate about empowering parents, is because unlike some legislators and some members of the public, it's kind of like gatekeeping, right? Well, I can't tell you how many, legislators that send their kid to private school or went to private school, and then they're kind of saying, but not those kids or whatever, or open enrollment, being able to allow if there's an open seat in a great public school, not those kids, and this gatekeeping mentality. But you, Hillary, said, my kids are okay. I'm blessed. We have the resources, the money, right? The money to do this. But I got to go back and fight for those kids. So you did. But talk about when you were fighting specifically against the librarians and how they told you the process that they put into place for you to be able to fight back against. Y'all should watch the podcast because we held up the inappropriate materials. There are little eyes and ears in this room right now, but it is pretty horrifying what kids were being exposed to. So talk about when you wanted to be empowered, you wanted the power to say, not in front of my kids. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty marginalized and pushed aside, right? Because unfortunately, and maybe you have encountered this somewhat on the school board, that there's a lot of energy that goes into maintaining a reputation. That, and not only that, but I was kind of faced with backlash from members of my community and thinking, are my neighbors going to look me in the eye anymore? I didn't set out to be the porn lady. My husband was like, well, that ship sailed a long time ago. And y'all, my folks are so proud. Like, porn has taken me far. Things you don't really say. Okay. But if I could just back up to a foundational level, I mean, we love Texas. And when Texas formed its independence, fought for its independence, one of the major issues was a free public education. And somehow along the way, we made this leap or this tunnel vision that free public education means public schools. And currently, our public schools have turned into institutions. I have 4 kids, and every one of them is different. Sometimes, like, my husband and I blame each other for, like, oh, that one's yours. I was just like, depending on the characteristic. But the point about it is that everyone learns in a different way. And to try to make our public schools as a one-size-fits-all model is failing our kids. And I'm not sitting here to put the blame on anyone. Trust me, I'm so grateful for our educators. That is a call that not a lot of people can do. And we recognize that is real sacrifice. And I'm so grateful for good teachers and good school board members. And so please don't hear me put the blame on one place or another, but we cannot deny that we have an education crisis in Texas that's very real. And when we look at our outcomes, and you can judge how we measure it, doesn't matter. The point is that we're graduating 94%, 97% of kids, but less than 50% can read and do math on grade level. Can I just be bold right now and say if our outcomes are anything less than 100%, it is wrong to stand in the way of these kids accessing other options. That's it. For whatever reason, it is wrong. There are children, and I think that's something that's really exciting, but also a challenge that parents are stepping into a place where we're ready to do something about it. We're ready to either partner with the public school, take action for the sake of our kids, and to be hindered in any way, like, you better get out of the way, because there's nothing that comes in between a parent and their children's opportunities for the future.
That's right. Thank you, Hillary. So, as a trustee, Rob, you've experienced from the dais similar to what Hillary experienced as a parent trying to push back. We talked about the fact that when parents banded together, ran for school board, the meet and greets in the living room, all the work that you put in so you guys could take the power back and protect your kids in your district. But tell us about when we talk about it's not bad people, right? It's bad systems. It's the way that we've created this system where there really isn't an incentive for a lot of people, particularly if they don't have the means. But we talked about how organizations, far left organizations that have really stepped in and pushed some of this stuff at our school board meetings. I've talked before how I get calls from trustees saying ACLU is telling people where to go. They're coming after our trustees. Can you talk about how you all stood up in a dignified, classy way, allowed the freedom of speech to occur, but really stuck together to protect the minds and the future of the kids in your district against those sorts of entities.
Yeah, sure. And you know, I think a majority of Texas feel just how you feel, right? In our school system, in any school system, charter school, private school, public school, et cetera, the hypersexualization of our children is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. It has no place in education in any capacity. Parents are responsible for raising their children in accordance with their values that they have. Right now, as an elected official, it's my responsibility to ensure that the values of the community are embodied in the public school system, right? That is my responsibility. It's a responsibility of elected folks. And if that doesn't happen, what happens? It's goodbye time, right? You get unelected really quickly. And in our school district, that's exactly what we did. These were very good people, whatever it is, but the community has a value set that they were not going to compromise on. And yeah, so when it comes time to stand the ground on certain things, there's a segments of the community, and more specifically, secular progressive groups that really want to get involved and disrupt that. They want to disrupt that in a lot of ways. In our particular case, it was with hurtful rhetoric and threats of litigation, not only against our institution, but also against us as individuals. So you have to be really bold to be willing to step in front of that and say, hey, here's what we think is right. Here's what we know what's best for kids. Parents, we're going to support you. Parents, we're going to hold the line on these types of things. But I'll be all, that's hard. And it's hard because there's a lot of money flowing in against the alternative. And so, you know, speaking for me specifically, which is all I'm here to do today, that's a fight worth fighting. And so we welcome any other parents out there that want to join in this fight with us. What we're doing is very common sense. It's not political. It's common sense. Right, and we're going to hold the line for our kids and what's best for our kids, and that's what we're going to do in my community specifically. So
wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. We're going to open it up for some Q&A time. Yes, sir.
One of the arguments in favor of school choice is that competition will make public schools better. A couple of months ago, the TEA introduced a new curriculum, which is not mandatory, it's optional, but which apparently, according to press reports, embraces aspects of classical education, embraces Western civilization, embraces phonics. It is voluntary, but if one is trying to improve school districts, is this adoption or the adoption of this curriculum, is that something that should improve public schools?
Absolutely. So you're referring to House Bill 1605, and the school board, our State Board of Education, adopted what's called a suitability rubrics to make sure that it's a high quality education. Look, this is a movement across the board, all parents, including those that are actively involved in fixing the problems in our public education system. So yes, a lot of it flows in line with a classical education. If you're unfamiliar with a classical education, I love it, y'all. It's amazing. It really is an education that prepares our young people to think for themselves. It starts grammar school. Look, we're going to teach you how to read. You are going to learn how to read, and you're going to use phonics. 40% of our public schools don't use phonics to teach their kids how to read. So let's just get that out there. So yes, phonics, grammar school. Then you go into logic. That would be your middle school time. We're going to teach kids how to think, not what to think. Unlike this teacher that stood up and said, I got involved in the profession to be a social justice warrior, or whatever it was. I'm just paraphrasing her. But the point is, we're going to teach kids how to think, how to critically analyze things. And then finally, rhetoric. That is the ability to articulate your thoughts in a productive way. You know, it's really interesting. I was reading about something similar to this, and I know that in the UK, Eton is the school that you hear the monarchy has gone to, and the Archbishop of Canterbury and all that. All of these people go to a classical education model at Eton. In fact, it's been going on for hundreds of years. By the way, back when they were supplying an education, hundreds of years ago, you couldn't get a math class without paying for it. So poor people did not have access to math classes. But what they did have access to is a classical education in the model that is being taught. So yes, and there's a lot of great school districts. In fact, Hillary, one in her district, has adopted it. They were one of the early adopters, and their kids' performance is just shooting through the roof. So that's what empowering parents is about. It's about really incentivizing a course correction in our public school system. Awesome question.
I have one here.
Thank you. Mrs. Hicklin, reflecting on your journey to being the nominee, on your way to the Texas House, can you talk a little bit about the difference in either feedback or the treatment you got from folks in your community that you were meeting every day along this journey, and opposed to the folks that are okay with the status quo across the state in Central Texas? Can you talk a little bit about the difference of those engagements and how you were treated and the things you heard as it relates to this movement?
That was a fantastic question. And I'll just go to the face-to-face in my community. I decided to run for office when my representative kept standing in the way of school choice legislation progressing in the Texas House. I decided that even if it was just a platform to educate my community on school choice and what could be, that it was worth it, and I was willing to put effort and sacrifice behind it. I ended up winning, and which was so exciting, and I'm really excited and hopeful for this next session. But when I'm knocking on doors and talking to my community members, overwhelmingly want options for their children. And I could see the two sides of the supporters to maintain the status quo and just continue in investing in that method versus parents and grandparents and community members who wanted something different. Was the motivation. Here, one side was motivated by funding and control. And the other side is parents that are motivated by love and a desire for their kids' future. And when it comes to that, the decision is clear. Like, who do we give the choice to? Who do we empower? Do we empower the parents or the institution?
Thank you, Hillary. Okay, we are coming up on our time for this panel. I believe that all of our panelists are going to stick around for a little while, and we'll have lunch after. Are we doing lunch now? We're doing lunch right now. Okay. Well, they're going to stick around. I'll be here too. We're going to go out and grab lunch, and then our next panel is going to be our policy expert. So it's exciting. We have Dr. Matt Ladner, who is from the Heritage Foundation. He came in to talk to you all about what's going on all across the country, really how this is going to take Texas to the top of the country in education. We have Madison Yandel from Governor Abbott's office, his policy advisor, and she's going to be able to answer questions. And then we have our in-house policy expert, Mr. George Borrego. So go grab your lunch and then come on back in here, and we'll get started on the next panel. Thank you all. I want to reiterate something really quick as y'all are grabbing your lunch. I feel in my heart to say this. These three individuals are leading the battle within their communities to change the face of Texas. Everything that they're doing is about ensuring that their parents' rights and their wishes are being executed in whatever education. And, you know, Rob, when we talk about this, you mentioned the threats and the things that can come. You know, I experienced that last week, by the way. Someone threatening TPPF and threatening myself and my family. And I want to say that at first, you know, I probably turned red with anger, and then I thought, we're winning. We're winning. We're over the target. Great leaders like these three individuals up here, great leaders like Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, Chairman Brad Buckley, Chairman Creighton, and so many other people. Yes. We are winning. Yes. So keep fighting. Please thank these leaders that are willing to stand up, speak truth to power, and we'll see you back in the next panel. Welcome back to panel number 2. We're going to talk about, so the first panel we obviously talked to parents who had gotten involved in the fight, to fight back, to take back control of the next generation of Texas, control of our children's future. And so that's the why. But this panel is the how and the what. So the how and the what is the passage of universal education savings accounts. And if you've watched our great governor traverse the state, and I mean, just a warrior fighting alongside our lieutenant governor, alongside chairmen of our educations committees, alongside parents and elected officials, we can't be stopped. But now the question is, what is this going to look like and how do we implement it? In fact, the House Public Education Committee is meeting right now to talk about the how. So, to answer all the questions and do it, I think, in a more fun format than sitting in front of a hearing, we have Mr. George Borrego. He's the K through 12 policy director here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. He's the man that gives me all the facts and stats that you all ask for and text me for and the one-pagers. That's Mr. George Borrego. Prior to joining TPPF, he was the legislative director for a representative in the Texas House, and he's worked in several other nonprofit sectors, and most importantly, he is a father of one. So welcome, George. Next, I will introduce Dr. Matt Ladner. Dr. Ladner came all the way from Washington, D.C. back to his home state. He grew up, is it Nederland? Nederland. I got that Niederwald confused. And went to the University of Texas, Austin. Dr. Ladner is known throughout the country as a policy expert on school choice. He's been involved in this battle for nearly 40 years now, I think, if I'm 30 plus, in the 90s. Yeah, sorry, gave that one. Okay. And he's been battling to empower parents with multiple forms of choice, starting in the charter school network and open enrollment, and of course, helping to lead the nation as state after state after state empowers parents with private school choice. Please welcome Dr. Matt Ladner. Oh, and he is a father of 3, I should add. And then our final guest is Madison Yandel. Many of you probably recognize Madison. She is the governor's education advisor. So she's the one that's really setting the path, setting the vision for what not just education savings accounts, but what Texas education can look like. In the previous session, we talked about 1605. We're talking about a lot of really innovative opportunities to reform a system that has unfortunately gone off the rails. She began working in Texas politics all the way back in 2013. You look like you're 15 years old. I don't know how that's possible. And in 2021, she worked at the organization and ally on so many things, Texas 2036. And then in 2022, she has been with our great governor, Governor Abbott, advising him in the policy sector. So thank you all for being here. So I'm just gonna sit down. We're gonna get comfortable. Dr. Ladner. Can you start by telling us, are education savings accounts a new idea?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. There have been suggestions. There was a book written by Jack Koons and Stephen Sugarman back in the 1970s called Education by Choice. Came out in 1978. You read it and you're like, wow, this sure does sound like education savings accounts. Milton Friedman talked about the concept of what he called partial vouchers in a column in the Wall Street Journal in 2006. ESAs started in Arizona. I got to be a part of the team that created the first program, and they kind of came about because we actually had a Supreme Court ruling by the Arizona Supreme Court that said vouchers were unconstitutional. Because of a Blaine Amendment in the Arizona Constitution, which is this relic of kind of anti-Catholic bigotry from a long time ago. And so we basically came up with this ESA model because It does not, the language in the Arizona Constitution said the state cannot fund a private or religious school, okay? And we kind of said, okay, well, we're going to fund an account, and it's going to have uses other than private school tuition, and this is clearly going to be under the control of the parent. The state is not compelling anyone to go to a private school. So in Arizona today, vouchers are actually unconstitutional, and the same courts found that ESAs are compliant with our Constitution.
Thank you for explaining the history. So yes, they're constitutional. No, they're not new. Empowering parents with choices has been around for over 40 years, and Dr. Milton Friedman was talking about it as a component of our education system decades and decades ago. Madison, you, as I said, have been kind of one of the visionaries that have, I would say, helped guide the governor on his desire to empower parents. And I'll never forget the one line that I heard him use, that he uses quite a bit, and I use it when disciplining my children now, which he says, "Mom and Dad are in charge." Can you tell us why school choice, why empowering parents with education savings account is so important, not only for families, but also for the entire state of Texas?
Yeah, certainly.
You should be on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think at a basic level, school choice really is like the ultimate parent empowerment. You can't claim that parents are really the decision makers unless they're actually getting to decide where their child goes to school, what type of curriculum that they're seeing, and those sorts of things. But I think at the same time, it's also kind of just getting away from this idea that your zip code decides your future, that because you live in this neighborhood, you have to go to this school regardless of if they serve students like you well. I'm a product of both public schools and school choice. My parents put all of my sisters and I in a Catholic Montessori program because they knew it was important for us to get a strong foundation in literacy, but then also knew that if we wanted to have more options as far as extracurriculars and just AP courses and those types of things, that a public school was going to better serve us. And so they moved us, but they didn't like the small rural school where we were zoned. There was a neighboring district that they thought better kind of served our needs. They had a better FFA program. They had those types of things that they knew they wanted us to be in, but they also, they were only able to do that because my grandparents helped pay for private school tuition. My mom was able to be a stay-at-home mom and drive us the 26 miles to school, the neighboring school district. So those were only things that we were able to do because we could make the financial, make it work. But there were times where it was obviously, it was hard. We didn't go on vacations. We didn't have new cars, but those were sacrifices they made. But some families, that's not even a sacrifice they have to make.
Thank you for sharing that. So I want to go into some of the common myths and things like that. I'm going to start with George. George, will ESAs defund public education?
Sorry, is this on? Yes, okay. No, not a single dollar of public school funds will be used for an ESA program here in Texas. And it has a lot of benefits doing that too. If we look at not touching a single dollar of public school funds and using only general revenue funds, we can make sure that the programs are free of any strings attached by federal requirements. We get to have the best program for Texans, and it's all based by decisions made up in that building.
Thank you. Madison, what is a myth that you'd like to dispel?
Yeah, I think one kind of big one, being a product of rural Texas, this idea that school choice will decimate rural schools, when at the same time they also will argue that, well, why would we pass this? It doesn't benefit rural kids. Well, for one, I mean, like I said, my parents, we did have choice. We had to drive 30 minutes every day to to have that choice. But I think it's both the idea, parents are still going to overwhelmingly choose their public schools. Right? We know that we've seen that in other states. But, they do deserve those options, and I think those options will, once we have a system in place, the supply will kind of follow. I think there's a lot of rural Catholic communities that would love the opportunity, to stand up a rural school, and I think too that the idea that it's an ESA isn't just about private school tuition. There's homeschooling, virtual education, all these types of innovations that kind of stand to be created once we have a program.
Thank you. Dr. Ladner, your time in Arizona started within the charter school sector, if I remember correctly. And as you've grown and as Arizona has been a leader, you've encountered the same myths that we hear here in Texas. And one of those that I'd say we're famous for, and after watching the success of the Olympics and our athletes, I know Texas ranked #1, which, woohoo, go USA. It's that it'll shut off Friday night lights and ruin our sports programs. Can you talk about, are there Friday night lights in Arizona? And
yes, there is in fact still Friday night lights in Arizona. In fact, my colleague Jason Bedrick and I co-authored a paper that we co-published with the TPPF about school choice in rural America, right? And the reality is that Arizona's been at this school choice stuff for a good long while now. We passed open enrollment and the nation's strongest charter school law in 1994, right? Back when Nirvana was at the top of the charts, right? We followed that up with the first scholarship tax credit program in 1997. We expanded that program a whole bunch, right? 22% of our public school students are going to charter schools. It's the most in the country. Then we created the ESA program in 2011, made it universal in 2022. Okay, so all that started in 1994. Every single school district, rural, not rural, that was educating kids in Arizona in 1994 is still educating kids today. Okay, they have 200,000 more students in school districts in Arizona today than they did back in 1994. There are 200 new district schools in Arizona today compared to what they had in 1994. If I wanted to be really mean, I'd go and look up the number of people employed by the school districts today in 1994, but I'm just, too nice to do that, okay? The kids are still playing football on Friday nights, and Mandy and I just did a podcast earlier, and I could tell you that a great example of a young man in Arizona who got the chance to go to a private school with the aid of the choice programs, because basically every private school kid in Arizona was getting help from the tuition tax credit program. You may be familiar with him. His name is Bijan Robinson. Okay. Now, if you think that there's too many Bijan Robinsons in the world, then you should oppose school choice. It's a terrible thing, and you should stay totally against it right now. And for those of you who may not be as big of football fans as I am, Bijan Robinson was a running back for the University of Texas. He was a fantastic football player, but his coaches all said he was an even better human being. Like, he was deeply admired by his teammates, by the staff, by the coaches, right? He's just a wonderful example of what you would like to see in our young people. And the great thing about all this choice stuff is it hasn't hurt anyone, right? It hasn't hurt the public school system. The public school system in Arizona has actually improved a great deal, and we get to have choice, and families get to have opportunities, and teachers get the chance to open their own schools.
Thank you. As a public charter parent that sends my child to a classical school, when we're thinking about empowering parents with choices, Madison, some of the other things that you've worked on, we talked about 1605 and how a lot of that goes along with introducing some classical curriculum into the classroom. Can you talk about that and what you all are working on to improve the entire education system as a whole that is driven by parents demanding a higher education product out of whatever school they're selecting?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think a big piece of it too is public school choice, having the ability to move to another public school district and not be told that they have to pay tuition as a public school parent, or not being told that they can't go to the campus that they think would better serve their child. So I think there's a lot there. Virtual education, our system is in much need of improvement there. And then I think as well too, I mean, just, again, the opportunities for both ESA students to and public school students to interact in a public school. There's a ton of kind of, I think, advantages from that front as well. But I think, in the previous panel, there was kind of these mentions around the battles that public school parents face when they have an issue with their child, and that there's not, a lot of them, I hear, all the time from, constituents across the state that they're like, I tried to resolve this with my campus. I tried to resolve this with my school board, and they've either just dismissed my grievance, or they've told me that, they closed it before they ever even looked at it, kind of thing. And so I think that's a huge area where, parents should be able to still go to their public school and resolve issues. It shouldn't be that they have to leave to get the education that their child deserves. So I think the parent grievance issue is probably the number one, in almost every other issue, the library book issue, all of those kind of point back to parents not being able to resolve, or really, I mean, even teachers or taxpayers who interact with the school district, anybody being able to kind of resolve any sort of complaint.
Thank you. George, before I stole you over to K through 12 education at TPPF, you specialized in workforce development and higher education. We know that 154 or 157 of our 254 counties are in population decline, population and K through 12. And simultaneously, we also know we have these massive workforce gaps that you found from the Workforce Commission. 10,000 electricians we're going to be short in 2030. 6,000 plumbers, 4,500 HVAC. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So one of the questions that we get, particularly from rural areas, is that workforce development component. How can education savings accounts really ensure that our young people, particularly those that don't want to go into the four-year college for all mentality, talk to us about how education savings accounts can open the door for us to close those workforce gaps with really high-paying, excellent jobs.
Yeah. So when we look at, one of the first big research products that I did here at TPPF was to look at the CTE offerings around the state and look at them geographically and see how they align with regional needs. And what I found was that there could be a little bit better alignment in terms of those high wage, high demand occupations. So a lot of these students, they go to their school districts and they're not getting those programs of studies that lead to high paying jobs. So where an ESA could step in is that they could help bridge that gap without having to put up a very high cost. A lot of CTE programs are very expensive to put up, especially among the skilled trades. But by utilizing an ESA, what is actually really well positioned throughout the state are community colleges or junior colleges. When I did an analysis, 90% of all rural students live within 30 minutes drive of a community college or junior college. And the community colleges, especially with the passage of HB 8 from last sessions, they are really set up to be the workforce engine of the state. So by using an ESA program and leveraging current allocations that the legislature has done, we could improve our workforce development, attract new young families to these rural areas, because the number one reason why people leave their home county is because for educational or work-related reasons. So you'd be able to attract more young families. More families will be able to get a good job all in their community, and we could start having a little bit more of a renaissance back in our rural communities.
I love that. It really, I mean, our rural area, yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Our rural area is truly the heartland of Texas. And when people are in their child rearing and money making ages, when we're trying to make decisions, parents love their children. They are figuring out first and foremost, how do I get my child to a great education? Particularly in high school, where, look, another stat that you told me, which was that, we went back and looked at the what is going on post graduation, and there's approximately 30% of our kids, they're failing to launch. There's no better way to say it. 30% of our kids are not in the military, they're not in a career, and they're not in some sort of post-secondary education. And a lot of them are males. When we really dig down into it, they're kind of the lost boys. And where are they and what are they doing? And this education savings account is life-changing for kids that go, I don't want to go to that school. I want to go work with my hands. I want to learn to weld. I want to be in the oil fields. I want to go. I mean, somebody here in Austin that was doing a video for us on HVAC workers was saying that you can come out making $60K and within 2 years you're making 90-something K. I'm like, I went into the wrong profession. Okay, so speaking of money, one of the things that we hear a lot about and people go, oh, the expenditures went up in Arizona. Oh my goodness, it's costing so much more money, right? And that's only part of the story. So can you please tell everyone, why did expenditures go up in Arizona, and is there a budget deficit now because of that?
The short answer is no, there is not a budget deficit in Arizona because of the ESA program. The ESA program uses less than 1% of the total funds in the state of Arizona.
Say it again.
Less than 1%, okay. What happened is that our governor, who is an opponent of school choice, had her staff put out this memo that claimed that the ESA program was bankrupting Arizona. And it is so catastrophically flawed on so many different levels that I would bore you to tears if I even started talking about it. But let me just tell you this, that about a week after she put out this memo, that I have found Republicans around the country are just complete suckers for this thing. They're falling for it hook, line, and sinker, okay? About a week after she put out her memo, the Arizona Department of Education put out a release that said, oh, by the way, guys, pay attention. The Arizona ESA program is under the Arizona Department of Education's budget, and our budget is in surplus. That's with an S, okay? Now,
say that again as well, for those in the back or at the Capitol.
The Arizona K-12 budget had a $28 million surplus. Right now, my Texas public school math that I learned back in the 80s is a little rusty, but I'm pretty sure that surpluses don't cause deficits. Okay? So it's a complete myth that the ESA program is bankrupting Arizona's budget. Arizona's budget, just like the Texas budget, is a very complex thing. Program enrollment, federal funds, the economy, how much revenue is coming in, blah, blah, blah. There's 9 million different moving parts, but the part with the surplus actually did not cause the deficit.
Thank you. Thank you for talking about that myth. Yes, that is right. Get it out there. And part of that's because what the state also figured out is you can provide access to a really incredible education for less money. Right? And just so everybody's aware, when we're talking about state budgets, last year Texas spent $92.4 billion on our public education system. We're approaching $100 billion, y'all. That is $16,792 per child if you want to be really, really specific. So it's incredible when you open up and incentivize parents, one, how you can save taxpayers money. We want to, bring down, eliminate property taxes and so many other things. So I think it's really important to be honest about the numbers and what's actually going on there. Speaking of the numbers, there's new polling that came out from the University of Houston and Texas Southern University, Texas 2024 trends, and we're going to talk about that on the next panel. But it's really, really important, particularly for the governor who is governing the entire state of Texas and what we're all concerned about. And no surprise, all Texans support empowering parents with school choice. So what does that tell you in the governor's office, Madison, about how we should be crafting an education savings account so that every single parent that needs to exercise their choice has access to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of one big takeaway too is that, they'll ask kind of both just generally do use support, and they always use, or at least I think this is the first time they've used ESAs, but they normally say vouchers, so even the negative, scary word still pulls very positively. But I think also too, even when there's overwhelming support for providing for low-income students, but even it's still the majority of Texans support providing ESAs, period. And also another kind of interesting point that, and I think, something my boss talks a lot about too, is that this will really create true competition. And that Texans respond positively to that. We're a free enterprise state that we see it across sectors that having that competition, public schools having to compete for students in a way that they never have before, can be good for and overall improve our education system.
Thank you. So, George, we've seen a lot of school leaders, administrators, soon to be former representatives. I mean, that full on push of the sky is falling, we have no money claims. And as we talked about, we just spent $16,792, almost $100 billion for anybody that's paying attention on what we're doing. But what I want to ask about these budget deficits that are impacting a lot of districts with they're claiming, the lack of funding. Are these the biggest drivers in the widespread deficits that we're seeing? Because it sounds like to just, I'm just a mom up here and I'm just looking at this data. It sounds like they're saying, we can't do better. We can't have more than 50% of our kids reading on grade level. We can't have more than 40% of our kids that can do math on grade level because we don't get paid enough money. Is that one of the driving factors in performance in education?
So, put it shortly, no. I'm going to go back 10 years to 2014. So in 2014, I graduated from high school, and the average per student spending was at a little bit over $10,000 per student, right? As you said, we're at $16,000, almost $17,000 per student. So we've had over a 60% increase in expenditures per student, but we're not seeing a 60% increase in performance in reading or in math. We look at the state where we're at. We have half the students who can't read. We have 60% of students who can't do math on grade level. And we've done that all, even after you adjust for inflation. You're still at a 23% increase in overall expenditures. So it's not a funding issue, it's a misspending issue. Now we look at, we look at one thing that Texas public schools are leading on, and it's building new buildings. So Texas is number one in capital expenditures and capital outlay. For the last 7 out of 10 years, we've outspent California in building new buildings. That is insane.
That is insane. Just let's say that again. Texas ranks number one in capital outlay. When we talk about where is the money going, and I will let Dr. Ladner give his example that we talked about on the podcast, which is, where is it going? Well, George is telling you where a lot of it's going. Look, we have a system that unfortunately steers far too much money away from our amazing educators. Y'all, they've created a whole organization to show off the architecture of public schools. If you go to this organization, it's owned by TASB. Find it on their website, but it's a whole different thing. But you will see, you've got schools that look like they are private schools in Silicon Valley. You've got schools that have a couple thousand kids with $100 million football stadiums. We have to stop and ask ourselves, what is more important? A stadium that could rival Baylor or UT? Or making sure that every child can read on grade level? And this is why empowering parents and, quite frankly, empowering taxpayers across the board in your public schools, those who need another choice, it's so important to really shine a light on what's going on and how your tax dollars are being used on things that, probably aren't really all that necessary. Dr.
So-
Ladner, let's go through your back of the napkin or public school
Yeah,
math.
public school math. So Mandy mentioned the $16,000 per pupil figure on this podcast we were recording, and I used my Nederland High School public school math again. I was like, boy, with a classroom of 20 kids, that's about $320,000. Okay. And I was like, well, let's assume we pay the teacher, including benefits and everything, $80,000. Where did the other $240,000 go? Okay. And the answer is that the public school system has seen a profound shift towards hiring non-teachers. There used to be 2 teachers in the public school system in the United States for every non-teacher, and today teachers are a minority of public school employees, right? Which puts a lower ceiling on what we can do to compensate them. But this is the thing that scares our opponents the most. What teachers are figuring out in states like Florida and Arizona is that they can walk out the door, they can start their own school, and they can cut out the middleman, and they can pursue their own vision of what a high quality education is.
Thank you. And this plays into really a narrative where the trustee who was up here earlier today that talked about how at a conference, at a Texas School Board Association conference, trustees were instructed, don't give your teachers pay raises. When we look at the numbers, why is the money not going into the classroom? Why is it the very same people that oppose empowering parents with school choice are the same people up in that Capitol that voted against the Harrison Amendment? Just so in case anyone's curious, last year in our session, there was an amendment that said 50% of this $4 billion was put forth by Representative Brian Harrison, 50% must go to teacher pay. Block vote no. No way. Because knowing they're going to come to these conferences, come and say, let's force our teachers. So empowering parents is really about empowering teachers, ensuring they have the ability to be excellent teachers and get the pay that they deserve instead of it being steered out of the classroom. One more question that I want to ask Madison before we open it up. One of the programs that growing up, I was a special needs student, and that I just adore for so many reasons. Those kids that touch your hearts, those most disadvantaged kids, our special needs community. The governor, in his wisdom, when schools shut down and so many kids were not receiving their services that they needed, he started the Supplemental Special Education Services Grant. Those were $1,500 grants that empowered parents and said, look, I see you. I know you need help. If you need to go get services because your school can't provide it, I'm here. I'm standing with you. It's now called the Parent Directed Supplemental Special Education Services. It's SSES to me. But it was incredibly successful. There's over 70,000 kids that have utilized it. There's 30,000 kids on a wait list to be able to utilize it. There hasn't been one report of wastewater or abuse within the system, which is awesome. But I would love to ask you, why do you think that program was so successful? And do you think that program can be expanded even further?
Yeah, I mean, and parents and the parent satisfaction surveys, which show, I think it's 97% satisfaction, overwhelmingly said that they felt that the grant had an impact on their students' learning process. That it was positive that they saw their kids, finally. I talked to one mom who was saying her son had never met grade level on the STAR, and then after just 1 year utilizing, she paid for additional tutoring for her son, and now he's meeting grade level on every single one of his STAR tests.
That's amazing.
And so I think those types of stories show you that, one, that parents, when given the opportunity, know what their child needs, and can direct the funding and do so in an efficient way. And I think you talked about the demand too. I think there is both a very clear demand, and we have the opportunity right now. A student can only receive the grant one time, so I think there's interest in allowing students to receive grants, over time as well. And so as the legislature, they, I think, almost doubled, if not more than doubled funding in the last legislative session for the program. It started with an appropriations cap. And I mean, I think legislators here overwhelmingly from their constituents that have been recipients of SSES, that not only do they love the program, but they want more of it. And that, the governor points often to this program as kind of it was our tippy toe into school choice and an ESA type program where parents truly, we're not giving them $1,500, but we're saying, here's $1,500 that you can direct to services that of your choosing that your child needs, for their education.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, it is Q&A time. I know y'all have lots of questions. One hand popped up right here. Hold on, there's a microphone.
Other than the ESAs being a major driver of success in Arizona and Florida, what other parts of your bills do you contribute to the success, and would they be compatible in a Texas bill?
It's always very hard to say because states tend to pass a lot of different policy reforms all at the same time, and it's hard to tease out exactly what did what. When talking about like Florida, Governor Jeb Bush just did like a whole bunch of different education reforms all at the same time in 1999. And we don't know exactly what caused what, but school choice was in the mix, but so was third grade retention to encourage early literacy and school grading and a number of other things, okay? What we do know is that their nation report card scores went way up, right? So are there things you can do other than school choice? Absolutely. Should you do them? Sure, because they're not mutually exclusive with choice.
Thank you.
On the issue of ESAs taking money out of the public school system, Texas is a little bit larger than Arizona, but how do you combat the public school system saying, well, if we didn't have that ESA money going to those other entities, we would have more money? How do you combat that argument?
It's false. It's hard to, so the money does not come from the same place. So the permanent school fund and the mechanisms that fund our public education system are over here. Okay, and that's how we fund public schools. And it's a very, 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 very wild formula. It's called the funding formula. There's like 15 people in the state. Madison's probably one of 15 that understands all the different weights that go into it. But that's over here on the budget, okay? And then, and you can look at this in HB1, the budget for the biennium last year. And then over here, there's education savings accounts, which comes out of general revenue. So completely separate pots of money. No one is taking anything away from the public school system. And that's why we talk about, this is the parent empowerment movement. It's not the school choice / just send your kid to a private school movement. This is recognizing that the one-size-fits-all system doesn't work for every child, and that's okay to acknowledge that. And we want to make sure that parents ultimately have the ability to say, I love my public school, or hey, public school, we're going to get better, or I'm going to go do this and that. But it's not coming out of any sort of the same exact funding. You have to have a completely separate appropriation.
One more question, Mandy.
I would say that if you want to keep the children in a public school, if administrators, supervisors, superintendents want to keep them, we are America. All we do is we work harder to keep them. But my question is this. You touched on the costs. I'm from an area where we don't have one charter school. We had the highest paid superintendent, over $600,000. We have the most expensive football arena. We also have $500,000 spent on PR campaigns, and that was 3 years ago when I checked. We do not have any voice as taxpayers. I'm also told that almost 90% of the taxpayers don't have children in the school district. We don't have a say. So yes, we want to be able to say our children, our grandchildren need to go someplace where they are able to have input into this, where there isn't this type of spending with our reading scores, with the children that live next door to us don't read on a third grade level, but you have these kind of expenditures. Can you speak into that, please?
Look, everyone benefits from having an exit option, whether you use it or not. Just the fact that it is there would deter the sort of things that you just talked about. They are able to do that and get away with that kind of stuff because, quite frankly, they say, well, you'll hear teacher union people sort of wrap themselves in the flag of democracy. And what they forget to, they're like Pericles giving the funeral oration. And what they forget to mention is the part where school district elections are often single-digit affairs, right? There's some real problems with school district democracy. The most powerful thing you can do to improve your system from the bottom up is to give everyone the option to leave. Most won't use it, but everyone has it, and that changes the power dynamics, not only for families, but also for teachers, right? Teachers get to go out and start their own schools. You don't have a charter school in your area. One of the big benefits for rural America and rural Texas for this is that we have the school choice 1.0, which is sort of like go out and take out a $30 million loan and build a 600 kid charter school. It doesn't really work that well in rural America. Micro schools, right? Micro schools are great for rural America. They're not going to hurt your districts. Your districts will get better, and your teachers will have the opportunity to have their own schools, and it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. I think we are at time for this panel, but our guests are going to stick around. Can you please give a round of applause for the brilliant minds that are crafting the legislation that will change Texas? Thank you guys for doing this. Hey, Chairman. How are you? We're going to go straight into the next panel, everybody. I'm pulling an audible here. We're going to put another parent up on stage because I think it's really important with the polling conversation we're about to have. So just give us 1 minute. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because there's a little bit of false narrative that both sides keep putting out about this. Because there needs to be some mechanism that says if your school is 75 years old, you need to spend money on
Of course, but have you looked at the buildings? Yes. Yes.
School district has
Yes.
$1.3 billion.
Okay. Well, yes, we'll do that. Okay. Our next guest, so like I said, I kind of am calling an audible here because I think this is a really important part of the conversation that we're about to have. And it's really, what do Texans think about school choice? So, let me introduce Shanera Morrison, a mother of one. Please welcome her. She came in from Port Arthur last night to be here and to talk about her experience. Politically, she is an independent, is what she would say. This is really important to hear from parents because we're about to have up Dr. Michael Adams, who did the polling that everyone across Texas is talking about the facts that empowering parents with school choice, whether you call it vouchers or education savings accounts, this transcends politics. It transcends race. It transcends socioeconomics. Every single parent knows deep in their heart that they should have the right, regardless of their income, zip code, street they live on, to select the best education for their child. So I'm going to call up Dr. Michael Adams. He is a professor of political science and public administration at the Barbara Jordan Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs at Texas Southern University. He is one of the authors on the new Texas Trends 2024 polling that we've all been talking about. And my good friend and partner here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, the head of the Booker T. Washington Initiative, father of 4, and just leader and courageous fighter, Dr. Richard Johnson. Okay, so something that we constantly hear about is they'll say, no one wants this. Right? We'll hear leaders, we'll hear particularly from the left side, the Democrat side, of we don't want this, and this harms African Americans, and this is not something that parents want, be it vouchers, the pejorative that has been pushed out there with, vouchers, ouch, and whatever other crafty little marketing idea that they've come up with. So obviously vouchers of the, decades ago is not the same thing as education savings accounts. For anyone that doesn't know the difference between an education savings account versus a voucher, parent empowerment is about giving the most options to parents to truly customize their child's education. Education savings accounts are the vehicle to be able to do that. Education savings accounts can be used, yes, for private school tuition at an accredited private school, but it can be used for a whole host of other things. Homeschoolers can use it, as well as any parent that's also sending their child to a different school, for curriculum, for tutoring, for therapies, for uniforms, for fee for transportation providers, for extracurriculars, for workforce development programs. It truly is the education system of the future. And it's how, again, we take Texas from being, quite frankly, very mediocre up to the top of the nation. Look, we're Texans. The Texas miracle economically is incredible. But the only way we continue that is to make sure that we are in the 21st century and providing parents with choices. So let's talk about the polling, and can you tell everyone the gist of what you found specifically as it relates to both vouchers and education savings accounts? Because y'all were really courageous, and I say that because so many people in higher ed, they go down and use that pejorative, vouchers, 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 and it's like, whoa, that's not even what we're talking about here. So can you talk about the methodology and the results, please?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. I was part of a collaborative group. Apologize for that. First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the great work that has been done here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I was part of a group with the University of Houston, the dean, Jim Granado, who is dean of the Hobby School, Mark Jones from Rice University, and Renee Cross. We've been working collaboratively doing a number of surveys. We call them trend surveys. In this one on school vouchers / educational savings account, it went out into the field in June of this year, and we wanted to look at what primary voters were thinking about this issue. And certainly I think the science was on the side of vouchers or school choice. And from a political standpoint, and you can understand some of the heat that I may have taken in certain quarters, right? But I've always taught that you have to, in research and as a scholar, you search for the truth. And certainly if we look at the surveys, and what I would like to do is just highlight some of the important findings for you. First of all, the survey shows that almost 2/3 of Texans, 65%, support legislation that would provide all Texas parents with school vouchers that would give dollars currently allocated to school districts to parents to pay partially or full tuition for their child at a religious or non-religious private school. A moderately smaller proportion of Texans, 59%, support legislation that would limit these vouchers to low-income parents only. So that's salient there. The other point, I think, it cuts across partisan lines in this survey, both Republicans and Democrats. They are favoring school vouchers or educational savings account. More importantly, as it relates to, I guess, the majority of Texans were Republicans, 74% of Texas Republican primary voters support school vouchers legislation for all Texas parents, with 45% strongly supporting this legislative proposal. In sharp contrast, only 57% of these same GOP primary voters support. 29% strongly support voucher legislation. Now, for the glaring finding is the black support. Almost 70% of black voters, they support some form of school vouchers. Now, admittedly, they follow the trope that it would take money away from the public school system. But you have to look at this finding, and it has to raise the questions that the leadership, as we've seen during the 23 legislative sessions, may not be in step with what their constituents are feeling about this. And so I'll stop there. All right. Okay.
Thank you for sharing what the science and data is telling us. So before we got started on this panel, I said that I was going to call an audible, and we've got a mother from Port Arthur, Texas, with a young man who I think he went to go find food. Oh, is he here? Okay, but Shanera Morrison is a mom of one son, and I know the love for your son is it's indescribable, right? And you've been coming
all the way out
to
here.
events. Yes, you've been coming to events demanding to be empowered. Would you please share, because I think you look like you are a lot of those that have been polled. Talk about your experience and what you shared with me before about your son starting school.
Well, thank you for having me. Hey, everybody. I have no political agenda. There's nothing I'm trying to push, but I do support this. We're from out of state, North Carolina, Florida. We've experienced the best education, and then we come to Texas, and it was a little like, hey, wow, everything's big in Texas. Why isn't the educational opportunities big as well? This is our future. My child has went to charter schools, public schools, and neither one fit for him. We had an experience through COVID, and we were able to do homeschool. And I saw him flourish. I saw him love to learn. And then we got back into regular public schools. The public schools wouldn't let me have lunch with him. They wouldn't let me go into his classroom. It made me feel uncomfortable, just because at certain moments, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you're teaching. I barely got a curriculum of anything. So now we're trying public school again. School starts tomorrow. And I'm afraid to send my kid to school because he's been bullied by teachers, by students. His grades don't drop because the mother that I am, I'm on top of everything. But at the end of the month, we may have the option to have to move back to Florida so that my son has a better educational opportunity. It weighs on where I live. It weighs on what I do for a living. This is more than just, it's more than just an educational voucher or a savings account. You actually give a child a future, the future that they deserve. I mean, every child, this is the future of Texas. Why not give them the opportunity to be great. So our experience has been like very discouraging. So I really hope that, you know, everybody supports this, and whether it's just a little bit of here, a little bit of help, or just a little whatever. I've spoken to many parents who want to be here and they want to give their opinions, but they can't take off of work. Nobody can afford that. They can't just take their kid out of school and switch schools and drive their kids 30 minutes away. So these options are needed, not just for us now, but for our future.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, thank you. I hope you'll stay up here because I can ask you more questions, but if you need to go.
No, I'm good.
Okay, we'll stay with us. Dr. Johnson,
okay.
Something that we talk about a lot, that you were involved in founding a lot of prison ministries, and you talk about that school to prison pipeline that is unfortunately plaguing our minority communities. Could you explain to our audience what your research has shown and what you found in the prison system, particularly as it relates to special needs?
Well, thank you so much, Mandy. God bless your heart for being here and doing what you're doing for your child and going that extra mile, because we all do for our children. And that's the most important thing that we got going. It's the most important thing that I have going is my 4 kids and now my grandson. The school to prison pipeline is real. I started studying this back when I started the PhD program initially in psychology, clinical. And and we actually did some research on what was causing individuals, we're getting to the root cause of folks going into the prison population. And then we looked at the fact that really about 80%, 75% of the folks who are in TDCJ are reading at or around the 3rd grade level. And about 80% of that 75% were diagnosed with dyslexia, but they were not diagnosed with dyslexia until they got to prison. And so basically, you know, kids were, and that's how in the neighborhood we say, well, they identifying them at the 3rd grade level and they making prison beds for them at the 3rd. See, the interesting thing about this is people in the communities know. They know, they feel it, you hear it through, and you see it through naturalistic observation. And so that's when we began to study it at the college and university level. Because one of the things, you know, I always said, you can know a lot of things and you can say a lot of things, but none of us can walk on water. We need empirical data. We need empirical data and the scholarly community to come in. That's why I'm so excited about what Dr. Adams has done along with his colleagues at University of Houston, his colleagues at Rice University. We're talking about 2 Tier 1 research universities and the largest historically black university in the state coming together to study this problem and then look at the solutions. And I think that Governor Abbott, give Governor Abbott a round of applause, please, because Governor Abbott, his thumb is directly on the pulse of Texans. This research says that the majority of Texans want school choice. And one of the biggest problems that we have in the African American community, talking about the school to prison pipeline, African Americans make up 12% of the population in the state of Texas, but 34% of the prison population. So we're the smallest group that make up in population, but the largest group in prison. So we have a lot of skin in the game here, particularly at a historically black university, to study the problem and come up with solutions. Now, one of the things that we're doing is we're recommending and supporting Representative Toth's legislation on dyslexia. Number one, it passed last session, but now we need resources in it for what? Early testing and early detection, then early intervention, so that we can curb that population of people. And they're normally found in the low-income areas. And so one of the things that I really love about Dr. Adams' research is the fact that 70% of black Texas voters support school choice. 72% support school choice only for people who are low income. So that is the largest group in support of school choice in the whole state of Texas. And out of the 19 black elected officials that come up here to Austin, the 2 in the Senate, 17 in the House, every last one of them voted against school choice. So that is a they're directly out of line with the people that they support. And you see that by having a young mother come up and share her circumstances. She's even contemplating going back to Florida. We don't want you to do that because in Texas we do everything big. We're gonna pass school choice big, and we're gonna move real big in the education system. But major kudos to Rice University, Texas Southern University, and the University of Houston working together in a collaborative way to come up with the research, honest research that gives the real picture. And one other quick thing, Mandy, we must do is this thing has gone viral across the state of Texas, but largely in the mainstream kind of media in Texas. We have to get this data down into the grassroots, where we have, community newspapers, cultural newspapers. It needs to be on the front page because that's what's going to put pressure on those legislators who are African American and Latino, because 60% of the Latino community support it as well. And all of their folks are voting against it when they come up here. We need to put that kind of pressure from the grassroots into our elected officials so that we can get to 76 votes in the House. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Dr. Adams, yes. I am curious if when you all were formulating the polls to poll both vouchers and education savings accounts, was the returns what you expected, and was it what your colleagues expected?
I think both surprising in terms of, and one of the biggest problems in terms of how you defined it and you operationalize those two can be different concepts, if you will. And the vouchers is framed in a pejorative sense, from a legislative standpoint, in particular, if you have an African American constituency, you have a liberal bent on it, and the way you define it and the way you couch it. And I think we did see some of that in terms of the differentiation between whether or not you want it for low income or across the board. But it was a small difference.
So I'm curious. I saw some of the pushback.
Yeah.
I know you saw some of the pushback. Why do you think some of the intelligentsia push back against what the public wants?
Well, again, I think it speaks to leadership, and probably my next research article, maybe we don't have any leaders, right? But I'll leave it there. But I think a lot of emotional kind of responses, and that's something, again, you have to be able to follow the science and the data. And if we don't have the ability to do these research projects and to look at independent variables, if it's a voucher, and see how it plays against a dependent variables, whether or not we'll have an increase in terms of educational outcomes. So it has to be understood in those terms. But also, I think at the grassroots level, at the community level, there has to be some understanding or a groundswell where I think Dr. Johnson is saying if it's in the media in terms of how it's disseminated, and then we can see that in these large legislative districts that are African-American majority, or they vote in those numbers, then I think we can begin to bring leadership around.
I think that's wonderful. And in fact, after this event, everybody will get an email from me, thanking everybody for coming. But we're going to make sure, we've sent it out. We're going to make sure that you all that are here in person, that are watching online, that you all have these studies so that you can push back. So you can talk about it to your community of how important this is. And, part of it, I think, as in Houston, recently we watched as Vice President Harris was invited to campaign at the union's big conference down there. And obviously it's been politically weaponized, regardless of what the people want, as you pointed out. But I would love to hear from your mouth what an education savings account. You told me you were scared and you were not looking forward to sending your child back to school, which is, as a mom, devastating.
Sure.
What would an education savings account mean to you for your son?
To me, I would say an educational savings account would provide me with everything, or with the funds to be able to get him the books, be able to get him the resources, whether it's like tutoring in situations where he needs to grow, or social events, just any aspect to help him grow as a human being, as a young man, as my son. I just want him to be the greatest version of himself. And I feel that an educational savings account will allow me to be able to have the resources, or to be able to afford the resources without choosing whether I want to pay rent or buy my son this book that's going to help him learn something, or where I can actually give him a space to where he's on his own and I can be able to teach him one-on-one without taking food out of his mouth. That's what an educational savings account would do for me.
And I assume it would take away that fear that you feel right now.
Oh yeah, it would make me feel a lot more comfortable. When I say to have your child come home and say that, oh, someone pulled my pants down, or somebody punched me in my stomach, and you go to a teacher and you go to the principal and they're deflecting the situation and making your child seem like your child's the problem. But your child shows up to school every day. Your child does their job. You make sure that your child's doing their work. And to see that every situation was turned, and it just made me uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It made me furious. It made me want to go to the school and there's kids. It made me want to raise something, and I don't like feeling like that, because I'm very passionate. When you're passionate about something, or even if you're passionate about a piece of your body, a piece of you going out into the world without you hovering, without you being beside them, I already can't even bring him lunch to school. I can't have lunch. I can't walk with him to his class. That would take so much off of me. I already have to deal with things in life that causes depression, anxiety, stress, and that would relieve so much. It'd make the world a better place. I'll be nicer when I go outside. I mean, I'm already nice, but just, it's easier to smile when your kids are comfortable, when your kids are happy, when they're thriving and they're growing, and you see that they're learning something new, instead of coming home and saying, oh, I didn't learn anything today. Because he knows the basics. I teach him the basics at home. So he's going to school learning less than what I'm teaching at home. So.
Thank you. Dr. Adams, since you've released it, was it about 2 weeks now? Can you share with us, have there been any of your colleagues in higher education in particular, but in your life, who have come to you and either changed their position and said, oh, wow, this really is, we talk about it being the civil rights movement of our time, but this really is something that's important to our community, particularly at our historical Black colleges and universities, particularly to see young men like your own be able to launch and truly reach their full potential instead of ending up in, whether it's the prison or failing to reach their goals in life.
I think the research has been well received because it's the platform we use is YouGov, which is a very reputable polling outfit. And so I haven't seen on an anecdotal level people are coming in and say, I've changed my mind. And I think that's probably, it's left up to the distribution network, I think, that we have to develop going forward.
Okay, Dr. Johnson.
I think that's going to be critical. What Dr. Adams just mentioned was the distribution network in terms of getting the word out, getting it down into the grassroots. Because right now it's kind of hovering, and those people who are politicos and those people who are in the know are coming around saying, well, hey, man, I see that these are reputable institutions. So they're making some changes, and that's anecdotal. But from a strategic standpoint, it's going to have to seek down into the grassroots, and that's going to take a more concerted effort. But I did hear the governor mention the data a little bit in one of his interviews. And so if you get the governor mentioning your data in the interviews, it's going to start to move into those directions. But the other thing is, the good news here, is it's scholarly work, and it's done at the highest level, and it's not coming from any interest group or any third party group that supports this, liberals or conservatives, Democrats or Republicans. It's the scholarly community. That is a huge piece. And the other side of that, you can feel very comfortable looking at this data because you're not alone in what you're feeling. You're the majority of Texans feel like you feel. And so and the majority of Texans who look like you feel like you feel. And so when you have that at that kind of wind at your back, you now, as us, and like I used to say in the Army, it's time to get out of the foxhole and charge the hill. It's time for us to charge the hill right now because we have the empirical data at our back, we have the anecdotal information at our side, and so what we need to do is move forward past school choice this session. We need 76 votes in the House, and some of those folks who are voting no against school choice and against parent empowerment and against educational freedom, 100%, and I just want to look straight at them, 100% of your voters are supporting school choice. So you need to get on board, get on the train, and let's move forward.
Amen. Shanera, have you spoken to, I know that you came to Austin when the governor led the rally. Chairman Frank, I don't know where he is, he spoke at it. He's not, he'll be up next, but you were there in the rain fighting for ESAs. Have you shared your position with any of your friends or family members in Texas about why this is so important?
Yes, I actually have. I went out and put out flyers and did free movie night. Wow. To invite people, but some people don't have the time.
Sure.
Even if you give out free pizza, they still don't have the time.
What did they say? So I wanted
a lot of people were with it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people loved it. A lot of people was like, why have they never thought about this before? A lot of people don't watch the news, so they don't know what's going on. As he said, it's hovering, but it's not deep down in there. But I'm spreading the word. I'm getting it out and put it on Facebook, Instagram. I take videos when I come out here. I invite people. Whether they have the time or not, I still share the information. I've spoke with representatives face to face when they get off the floor. Hey, this is what we want. Last session, they were pretty good. They were leaning towards it, and time ran out. So I just hope that they lean towards it again and support it because we want it.
Well, thank you for being an advocate because there's nothing more important than having another parent talk to another parent, talk to another parent.
Because they understand.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So we're going to open it up to questions because I have had several people ask me great questions that I know that they want to hear from Dr. Adams and everyone on stage, and probably now Shanera, who thank you for just jumping up here on the spot.
No.
Thank you all so much for being on the panel. I am gleaning and just being a sponge right now. Dr. Johnson, you mentioned earlier about the school to prison pipeline, and you mentioned that it's a reality.
Yes.
And I I recognize that I'm a former K through 12 teacher and administrator in South Dallas, so I know about the Title I impact in those zip codes. And so can you speak specifically to the disconnect between the reality of the school to prison pipeline and how come there's still such a demonstrative expression of passivity in those communities, even though it's real?
I think, the passivity comes basically from the leadership. And the leadership, and they're following a party narrative. And the leadership is saying, everybody look over here, don't believe what your eyes are telling you. And everybody and down in the grassroots are saying, no, man, we're going to prison. But what ends up happening is those folks down in the grassroots begin to hate the system because they think the system is rigged against them. They hate it. So guess what? You have a 3% turnout to vote. Simply because they're not going to go vote for these people because they think these people are rigged, and they're saying Ray Charles can see that folks going to prison here, And these guys, and we're electing these guys, and these guys are telling us, no, it ain't, it's those other people. No, it's you. But here's where, and I'm gonna just say a couple of, and there are major newspapers in the black community. In Dallas and in Houston and most of our major areas. In Houston, the Houston Defender or the African American News. This data needs to be on the front page of those and then disseminated out into those communities, in those households, so people can say, here's a remedy. We can go this way. Because the elected officials, all of them voted against school choice. And so
why? Explain why.
Because they're highly supported by the teachers' unions. The teachers' unions are controlling this narrative. Just like the head of the teachers' union got on the stage with the vice president in Houston, these folks are hand-to-hand, lockstep together. But at the same time, it's killing and destroying the people in the grassroots. But it's our because we're leaders and defenders of freedom. It's our responsibility to figure a way around them and get the message into the masses, and then the masses will rise up. There's an old saying, truth crushed against the earth will rise again. So if we press the truth past them and get it to the masses, they will rise up, and we'll see a transformation among those elected officials. They'll change their narratives or they'll change their people.
Hi, I have perhaps a somewhat unique perspective in that I was a retired community college teacher, so I taught most recent high school graduates at the city of San Antonio for many years, and then I ran for school board in San Antonio on a parent empowerment platform along with a bunch of other people, and we got smoked. And during the course of I'm a math person, so during the course of getting my data, I discovered demonstrably the disparity between the grades the students were getting in my district and the test scores, third-party test scores, indicating where they were actually. And it's incredibly dramatic. So at one point, I brought this information to the San Antonio Express News. Here I am, I'm a candidate for school board. I'm raising an issue that goes to the heart of the meaning of the school board. What kind of job are we doing educating our children? And the largest paper and the other papers in San Antonio, totally disinterested. You know, it's like, where are you on vouchers? Vouchers are an existential threat to public education. That was the mantra that got repeated over and over again. So it's really hard to get this information out. So sure. If I may, what I've done subsequently, the data they had gotten on my school district, I'm developing on, I believe, every ISD with 20,000 or more students in the state of Texas. And what I found in my district, seems to be repeated throughout the state. And Mandy mentioned that the STAR results have 50% of the students can't do math at grade level, and 40+% can't do read below grade level.
Can I help you out right here? Because I think you're directly on point. That this is what happens. You did your research, you did your data, and then you went to the press with your data. Here's the difference in what's happening right now. When you have two tier 1 research universities and the largest historically black university bring forward scholars and scholarly research, then it has the backing of that credibility that says, he's not trying to elect anybody to anything. The data is the data. This is what it shows. And if you refute that data, then you have to refute a lot of other research that's going on at these major universities. And that's the difference. And so this is a golden moment for us. We have to get that information down into the grassroots where it can help transform individuals.
Thank you. That's exactly right. It's making sure that people know, so that the grade inflation, parents are wise. They can see if your kid's in 5th grade and can't read, why was he passed up to 4th grade and 5th grade? And so that's exactly right, bringing attention to that.
We have time for one more.
Hi, I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. I am very deeply involved at a grassroots level and with education in Montgomery County, Texas. I speak to my constituents, my legislators, et cetera. And one of the biggest things that come up, it's obviously very controversial, is people are afraid that this is going to allow government a foothold in like homeschool, et cetera. Can you address that?
Sure, absolutely. So one of the great things about the way that this system is set up, if you're unfamiliar with how an ESA works, well, first off, let's talk about the legal language. It explicitly states in the education savings account that was in HB 1 of the 4th special session that in no way does a parent exercising choice from an education savings account, does it open the door for the government to regulate whether it's homeschooling or private schools, their creed, their practices, their curriculum, their hiring standards, their admission standards, or anything. And this has been argued multiple times at the Supreme Court level. So again, it's why 31 other states plus the District of Columbia have all passed some form of private school choice. Now, when you say, does this open it up? The way that the system is set up, if a parent chooses to utilize their choice, the money goes to the comptroller's office. It's held in an account. The parent is the directive. The parent is in charge of any sort of transfers to an accredited private school, or to be used for their homeschooling, or to be used for their workforce development, or to be used for their tutoring, or to be used for their therapies, whatever their choice is. So as someone, myself, who has a very healthy distrust of government, this is something that was absolutely taken into account when the drafting of legislation, being able to look at what happened in other states. Did they do it right? How did they do it wrong? And then ultimately, it's about vigilance. The same people that are supporting passing education savings accounts are the same people who, when Austin, Texas, the only city in the entire country that came and tried to regulate homeschools and learning pods during the COVID pandemic, it was the same people that said, nope, that dog's not gonna hunt, and we're gonna lay down legislation and we're gonna give added protections. So as Ronald Reagan said, freedom is not passed down in our bloodline. It is not. We have to make sure that the next generation is prepared to protect and lead not only Texas, but our entire country, and quite frankly, the free world. And so the vigilance of ensuring that no, government does not have any access will be eternal. And that's why we're here. That's why there's an entire parent empowerment coalition. That's why the Texas Homeschool Association, the largest coalition, is a partner in all of this. That's why the Institute for Justice, who have argued this at the Supreme Court level, is a part of the parent empowerment and coalition, is because we're standing firm with those parents if they want to homeschool, or the private schools if they want to participate. And even more important than that, any education savings account, be it a parent or be it a provider, 100% opt-in. If you say, no, I don't want to try that, that's fine. We will 100% protect your right to maintain whatever practices that you do. Great question. Okay, I think that's it. We are so grateful for all these leaders. Thank you, Shanera, for jumping up here on stage. Thank you, Dr. Adams, for being here. Of course, Richard Johnson, my partner in all of this. We are so grateful for all of you and the great work that you're doing. Please keep turning it out. We will make sure that everyone has the polling so that you can. Please submit it to your local newspaper. That is really, really important. Our next panel... oh, good. Okay, we've got the chair. We've got both chairmen here. Okay, gentlemen, Mom, thank you for being here. One more round of applause. And can we thank all the parents who drove in from across Texas with their children to be here to fight alongside us? So our last panel today, I feel like they need no introduction, because if you've been a part of the parent empowerment movement for any period of time, these two gentlemen have been at the forefront, standing at the back mic, standing at the front mic, in the meetings, in the coalition, fighting for you, the parents of Texas, ensuring that every single one of you know what empowering parents is all about. My first guest I'd like to invite up is the Honorable Briscoe Cain. Chairman Cain chairs the House Agriculture and Livestock Committee. Wherever you would like to sit, sir, you are welcome. And he is a lifelong resident of Harris County. He attended San Jacinto College. He went on to earn a bachelor's degree at the University of Houston and a law degree at the South Texas College of Law. He is our resident bulldog, expert on all things procedure, and the dad that is willing to say it like it is. Please welcome Chairman Cain. And our next guest is Chairman James Frank. He chairs the House Human Services Committee, and he is in his 6th term on the House of Representatives. He serves on the Defense and Veterans Affairs Committee. He owns Sharp Iron Group and Transland, Delta T, 3 Wichita space manufacturing companies. He's a lifelong resident of Wichita Falls, where he and his wife, Alicia, work and live and have raised their children in the community. They have 6 sons, 2 daughters-in-laws and granddaughters. And again, he is a father and a grandfather that is leading this movement across Texas, and equally as important, as we just talked about with the polling, up at the Capitol. Please welcome Chairman James Frank. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We have had an awesome day where we've had parents, school board trustees, soon to be, or the Republican nominees. I mean, we have spanned all different parents in the parent empowerment movement. And you all are kind of really the key to it, because as we all know, we talked about the polling, parents across Texas, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Black, White, Hispanic, Asian, all of them are demanding empowering parents. And yet, we didn't pass school choice. So y'all are here, y'all are the leaders. We would love to hear kind of from your perspective, I'll start with Chairman Frank, what happened last year and why is this year different?
Math is why it's different. We had an election between now and then, and we simply didn't have enough votes to pass choice. I call it parental choice. You can call it school choice. I think schools already get to choose. Now parents do. But I think the main thing is that math. A lot of people lost. It has been very clear that this is something that almost everybody wants. Republicans strongly want it, but Democrats want it. As I say all the time, every single person wants school choice for themselves. Some actually want other people to have it, right? Like everybody wants it for themselves. You will do anything to get options for your kids. Some people actually think everyone should have options. And I think that's why we're on the right side of this. It's kind of funny, we were looking back, I remember when there were 35 people that would vote against that silly Herrero amendment every year, and now I think we're on the cusp of being able to have the votes to get it done.
Thank you.
On the cusp.
Yeah.
Not there.
Not there.
Lip
We
of the
got to
cup-
keep
lip of the-
fighting.
lip of the cup.
That's right.
I
Chairman
think it
King?
failed for similar reasons, but because I think people
grossly underestimated or kind of understood the movement. I mean, we'd even warn them, like, man, you don't want to do that. I remember before the vote telling some of my friends that sat near me in the aisle going, you don't want to do that. One reason I was saying, you don't want to do that, I'm going to help whoever runs against you, which should be done. No, seriously, okay, there's rules. Members aren't supposed to do this. But if you really, really think that educational freedom is a civil rights issue, if you believe that, then how are you not my enemy if you're preventing children from having freedom? We're at war. This is not a normal issue. For me, this is just like abortion. You want to kill babies? We're at war with each other. And so we tried to warn them, and I think they miscalculated grossly. And I think many of them now regret it, especially the many that are at home. I mean, was it 5 that chose to just not run for re-election because they knew it was coming? Mm-hmm. 9 members learned the hard way.
Yeah.
They misunderstood.
Yeah, I think they did.
Just on that, I would say I think one of the things from a polling standpoint, and I've told members this, and there's superintendents are important. There's a lot more parents in your district than superintendents. Like, just do the math. I've got one of the most rural districts. I got 14 counties, 44 school districts. That's 44 superintendents. There's 200,000 people. Just because you only hear from the 44, a lot more parents in your district. And I think a lot of people only hear from certain people.
Yeah.
Which one should you be more afraid of?
Yeah, you should be more afraid of your voters.
Yeah.
Right, the moms and dads.
I'd be a whole lot more worried about the single mom that's willing to do anything for that child, anything that gets in the way, or just the mom in general. I'd be more afraid of her.
I think that's a wise calculation, and hence the reason you all are back this next year and will be serving the 89th legislative session. So we just had a great question from a mom back here who asked about the legislation that you all, knew front and back, because obviously you were going to be fighting for it. Mm-hmm. And she asked about a question that we get a lot in terms of, does education savings account open the door for government regulation into homeschooling and private schools? As a homeschool father, I would love for you to share why you are confident that we can provide parents with greater choices if they want to homeschool, and why you are confident that whatever legislation, that the piece of legislation that will be put forth next year, hopefully, if we're lucky, Governor Abbott will make it an emergency item again. And if I'm a big proponent of what Lieutenant Governor said, which was first bill out the gate, get it passed, then we'll do others. So can you, as an expert at this, both as a parent homeschooling, but also as an expert that was deeply involved in the actual crafting, I'm sure you'd love to hear it from someone that's there in the room.
Yeah, so I was actually on the Homeschool Coalition for quite a while. We've homeschooled, we had 6 boys. We just finished actually 2 years ago for a 25-year journey doing that. But I would say first, I never think you're safe from government intervention, ever. I just don't think this adds to it. But I think we always have to stay vigilant about freedoms, and the freedom to educate your child at home, the freedom to educate your child in private schools. You always need to stay vigilant, because really there are bad bills filed every single year that want to remove that from you. So there's nothing I'm going to say or do that should make you think, oh, okay, well, they've got it, I don't need to worry about that. You should always be intelligently worried about that. There is nothing in any of the states that I'm aware of, 35 states that have done this, where you can tie an ESA to increase regulations. The states that want you to not have the freedom to homeschool your children don't want to have it, whether they pay money or not. There is just no correlation. And so while I understand and appreciate, I've done this whether it was on the Tebow bill or others, like, people should be concerned, but at the end of the day, I want to give people options. If you don't want to take that option, that is awesome. If you need that option, that is awesome. If you want to go to public schools, that is awesome. Some people hate public schools, but I want to give you options. And there is nothing that I've seen, certainly nothing in the bill. There's a whole lot in the bill that makes sure there is no intervention because of an ESA. But we also always ought to stay vigilant. I'm not sure if I was talking to the right mom who answered that. I just looked over there. Right there. Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Concerned citizen.
But no, I think this bill was very carefully crafted to make sure that. But at the same time, there's also 5,000 bills every year that you should be worried about. just not this one.
Thank you.
I would almost, just to, if it helps, there are a lot of homeschool dads in the legislature.
We could take more.
Yes, but the education committee's meeting right now. There's at least 2 homeschool dads on it right now. There's 2 homeschool dads sitting right here. I'm not going to do that to my family. So I think that also helps. But that gives me the idea. There's a lot of homeschool fathers and parents and mothers in the legislature and staff that I don't think we're going to allow that to happen. But of course, there's always that risk. Again, you have the choice to take it or not.
Thank you. So something that I think that a lot of our guests here and viewers that are watching, when you talked about what happened last year and how there were 21 Republicans who decided to remove the education savings accounts and kill the bill, which was discussed from the debate, you said they made a miscalculation. Can you elaborate on what the calculation was and who they were hearing from that made them make that mistake, that parents across Texas were not united and ready to fight?
Yeah. Look, it's an echo chamber, and I recognize as a member that I run a risk of being an echo chamber as well, based on the things that I go to out of session. You probably won't be surprised if I tell you I don't go to a lot of Chamber of Commerce meetings. I show up to some, but it's not my style, right? Because I'm not going to find, but I have a feeling if they were there, these people, because of the impetus by chambers to have government part of it, which is the darndest thing, right? The junior college is there and the public school, and they all have board positions. I don't understand how that's part of the mission of the chamber, but it is. These people, I think, are part of that echo chamber. They're around the wrong people constantly, and they made a miscalculation because for probably multiple years, they've avoided the grassroots. These are the same people that oppose banning taxpayer-funded lobbying. These are the same people. You're noticing a pattern, and I think they've been around the wrong people consistently, that they're kind of hiding with their heads in the sand, hoping that the base doesn't want more freedom, and they're just wrong, and they've paid the price.
I think sometimes, there were 21 Republicans that voted against it, 5 decided not to come back, 9 lost, 7 are coming back. But I do think we need to, sometimes if you have a rep that is more moderate than you would like, it doesn't mean you shouldn't keep communicating to them, because I think sometimes when you have a moderate rep, they don't hear from anybody again, and they need to hear from you all the time, even if be respectful, but be passionate, let them hear, because I think sometimes some of those people would say, well, nobody called me, nobody told me, nobody. I'm like, sometimes you need to let your elected people know what you think. Whether you agree with them on everything, whether you think they're a great rep or not, they're still your rep until you're able to successfully change reps.
Summary, though, these people keep making bad calculations. At the end of the day, the people that voted against educational freedom are the same ones that oppose us on election integrity. They're the same ones that have opposed us on banning taxpayer-funded lobbying. These are the same people that keep making bad calculations. Frankly, their status. They're a few good people, but at the end of the day, they still think government's the solution.
I told y'all he just would say it like it is. So, you bring up that it's the same people that oppose certain pieces of legislation, and one thing that you brought up was the taxpayer-funded lobbying. And a lot of people may not realize how much of their tax dollars is being used to fund lobbyists. Right? They don't realize you can go to Transparency USA and you can track these lobbyists and see the millions, tens of millions for some of those big dogs up there. And they wield a lot of power. They can afford fancy dinners down the street. They can do all these things. And this really is a part of what I would say contributed to the miscalculation. But can you enlighten everyone about kind of what happens with taxpayer-funded lobbyists, particularly those that are paid to lobby against parents for the entire system?
Sure, James.
Yeah, okay. Really, you did a good job of outlining it, but basically you're using government funds that's being put in the budget to then pay lobbyists to come here and tell us what to do when really we are already representatives and should be being told by our constituents what to do. It's actually a little more nefarious than that, because the money goes to the taxpayer-funded lobby, and then it can go into our campaign accounts. Now, you might imagine Briscoe doesn't get much of that.
You say that one more time. Hold on. That's really,
I don't get much
really important. Say it again.
No, the taxpayer-funded lobby, if if City of Houston, whoever, City of Austin gets money, goes to a taxpayer-funded lobbyist, then the lobbyist then turns around and donates straight to people that support. Typically, they give a lot more money to people who support more of those issues, right? So your tax dollars are at use going to your elected representatives to be spent to have you have more of your tax dollars removed from your pocket. And
that's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's it. It's a money not money laundering probably by technical, but I'll call it money laundering. Yeah. It is kind of a money laundering, scheme. It's not. Yeah.
With tax dollars.
With tax dollars.
It's interesting. You pointed that out. We had a lot of people here to listen to a really, really courageous trustee from a Central Texas school district who confirmed that he attended a conference, Texas Association of School Boards, TASB conference, where they do leadership training.
Speaking of courageous.
Right. Hey, can we put a chair up here? Sean. Representative Theory, we're talking about you. Girl, get up here.
I said, speaking of courageous.
Right? I know. I'm going to throw you up on stage because you look amazing and you are a warrior for parents. So come on up here.
I did not mean to crash the party.
No, girl, I'm forcing you. You are right?
Oh, my goodness.
Right there.
Okay.
I'll hand it to you.
Representative Sean Theory, y'all, she is joining us from Houston because, as we all know and witness, she was the warrior that stood up for kids all across Texas and the nation. Yes, took note to stop the gender mutilation, to stop all of the insanity that is coming from crazy people to try and convince us, gaslight parents into allowing this very pernicious ideology that's wacko, that boys can turn into girls and girls can turn into boys. So thank you, Representative Theory. I've thrown it up here, but also something. Recently, you did a podcast where you talked about your daughter and why it's important to empower parents. So that's what we've been talking about, but you actually just happened to walk in at a moment where we were talking about taxpayer-funded lobbyists and how they take your tax dollars and funnel it, launder it, as Chairman Frank said, to campaign coffers. And I think that you have experienced that yourself when you were willing to stand up for kids and experience kind of these entities that would funnel money against you because you stood up against, quite frankly, your party and those that wanted to push this pernicious ideology onto your daughter, my kids, your kid, right? So can you tell us a little bit about your experience and how you're fighting back?
Thank you. Can you hear me here?
Okay.
So, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I didn't know I was going to be here. I just am here, but I'm so happy to join you. It really has been, I was telling someone actually this morning that when you take a stand for something that's just a core value of yours, and quite frankly, lots of other people, your constituents, the people you know, you have to be willing to just say, hey, I'm going to put people and children over politics. Because other than that, why are we here? We're selling our soul otherwise. And so I prayed about it before I made the speech. And I knew there were folks that said, well, what are you doing it for? They're going to pass it anyway, And I said, but I'd be putting my name down saying that I support something that I fundamentally know is harming children. Why would I want that? Why would I want to look back at that 5 months from now, 5 years from now, or other people look at it 50 years from now? And so that was really my litmus test. It wasn't to garner attention or anything such as that. And then candidly, I don't always say this, but I'll share, I talked to my own colleagues on the other side, this side of the aisle. It said, oh, we agree, but we'll get in trouble. So to your point, they will come against us. And they literally, I had one person come to me and hold my hand and say, Sean, just hold your nose. Just hold your nose and just vote like you're against saying you have to be 18 before you can mutilate a child's body. Hold your nose and pretend like you're against cutting, that you're in favor, should I say, of cutting off healthy breast tissue of a 13-year-old girl who does not have cancer. You know, hold your nose and say you believe you should be giving an 11-year-old boy estrogen. Hold your nose and say you should be giving children Lupron, which is a chemical castration drug we give child rapists or men who have prostate cancer. Pretend like you should give those drugs to kids that do not have cancer. So I couldn't do that. And I think, to go back to your original point, you know, I paid a price for it because they made me pay a price for it. It wasn't because my constituents didn't agree with me. That's the part that I hate, that people say, oh, it proves that her constituents were all against her. No, it proves that I didn't have the money to get the message out and explain what was really going on. You know, in a state rep race, when people spend $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 on a single issue, you know, you really know what you're dealing with. And that has to change. But ultimately, we can't be here for the approval of special interest groups. You know, I can't live for that and the opinions of those people. I'm here for our families, our constituents, not just my child, your child, all children. And so at the end, I told someone, I didn't lose, I won. I won because I'm free from that. I'm free from that. I'm free from having to, I guess I always was free because I didn't do it, but on some level, just have to be bullied into submission. And it happens to members lots of times. And so I think if we all start to take a stand and we all say, no, we're not going to do that, then it won't have the impact that you're talking about. And I know it's easier said, Briscoe, right?
Sean, I'm so glad you see it, that I think right now, in this moment, because of what you've gone through, I'm glad you see that there's a future. A few years from now, pretty soon we're looking back and no one's going to remember any of this. If you study fights around civil rights, guys, if you look at school integration, if you understood what's going on around it while they were trying to do it, it was really similar things, okay? Like, we've been here before and everyone's forgotten about it. And sadly, some people forget about the courageous people who were there. So I appreciate you for being courageous during that. But people remember the hope comes in the morning. They remember, we know when integration was accomplished, and we forget the faces, and people forget how bloody and dirty these times were for this country, and of people not having courage and people regretting it. And we see it over and over again. So let's give her some love. Thank you, Sean.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
But I think school choice is going to come that way as well, and we will all forget the names. We'll forget our names, James. They're going to forget our names. We're also going to forget about the people who were cowardly, but we will remember the victories. We will remember the lives changed. And it's going to be
And on that issue, we've talked about that. I'm sorry to say that. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sit this way. Just all of us, we have to say, who are we? I told someone at a constituent, I told you this story. Call me up and say, where did you go to college, Rep Theory? Didn't you go to college in Washington, D.C.? And I said, yes, I went to this college at Howard University. And he said, how would you feel? He's a parent that wants to send his child to a different school. And he said, how would you feel if someone told you you could only have gone to college in your zip code? You know, I said, you got a point there. And he said, think about the people that get Pell Grants and all of that to go to other colleges. He said, who are you to say what's best for my child? And I said, I can't. You know, so when I really started to listen to my constituents, parents who said, I have 3 kids, Representative. One is in a traditional public. She said her son was there, that's best for him. One's in a public charter because there was a STEM program for her daughter that she said, my daughter loves STEM, that's for her, that keeps her engaged. And one is in a private school because he's very, very shy and has to work in a smaller environment. And to say, who am I to say, no, you all have to be here. And that's the only way we're going to support you as a state, is if you go here. And so that opened my eyes up to it, and it shouldn't be politicized also, but that's another issue, Briscoe, as you know, that on both sides of the aisles, you can get raked over the coals. Literally, people will try to destroy your life if you're in favor of it.
And despite the fact that I bet you half of the people in your party on that floor agreed with your position. And by the way, if you have a chance, just look it up. It's the best. I've been in the Ledge 12 years, and it is the best 7-10-minute speech I have ever heard on just laying out the issues, really of the transgender ideology. And it takes courage to go, because I think you knew what the cost was very likely going to be. But it was impressive, and also obviously the working of the school choice. There's also, while the Democrats voted 100% against it, there's a lot more, probably 10 to 20 of your number that know it is good for their kids and can't figure out a way politically to vote for it. And I think that's encouraging, because we want to split everything into only two parties. There are people in the Democrat Party that know this is best for kids. We need to be reaching out to those folks as well. And honestly, I'm very sorry that you lost in your campaign, but you may have won. You have a little more time with your daughters. Or your daughter, who's the smart one?
Hey, God always knows the answer,
Yep.
right? In His time, not mine.
Well, she won, because now she's able to say the truth, talk about what goes on, and stand with her constituents. We just had Dr. Adams up here talking about how this issue is a winner for Democrats, particularly Black Democrats, but Democrats, Republicans, independents, parents. Our love for our children, it transcends any political party, and we're united. For the first time ever, we are united in fighting back. And so I know it did cost you politically, but I'm firmly of the belief it's because there are greater things in store in your speech and your position on the gender modification issue. I believe that you are not only going to empower parents in your district, but I think you are empowering those legislators who did hold their nose and who now see that might cost me, but I'm going to go down in history as a fighter, and I can change and protect the lives of children in the next generation of Texas. So thank you again for being a warrior.
Thank you.
So let's talk about what we expect to see. This is about what we want to do is we want to arm everyone here as we're really thinking about the next legislative session, and staying united as the Parent Empowerment Coalition, continuing to build and grow as we are doing, as we've witnessed all day, the public school parents, the policy experts, the elected leaders. What do we expect to see in the 89th legislative session, and what can the coalition and the parents of Texas be doing to support you all as legislators and, Rep. Theory, a voice for parents, particularly our minority parents, who believe what you believe, and that every single parent should be in charge not only of protecting their children, but also empowering them with the choice of where to send them to school?
Yeah. Ron, I think we've given Sean Theory a statewide district. You'll be working on your policy area, and I think people already have plans for you, and you know that. So good luck with that. Good luck with your travels. Man, look, next session's going to depend on a lot of things. And right now, I would like to see, the person would like to earn my vote for speaker would be somebody that's going to come out pretty quick, hopefully sooner than later, and say that they do want the governor to make school choice an emergency item, and that they will be bringing that bill to the floor in a timely fashion. So if we're looking ahead to next session, hint, hint, there's people on stage that might want to do it. Look, we need whoever that is to be willing to come out on that. So that's where it starts. I want to see next session we go ahead and get this out of the way, set a marker really early on. Not saying that we're going to do all the great policy stuff towards the end. It's not going to wait. We're going to get it done early, and that's what it needs to look like. And I think the energy is there to make sure that school choice is that first one, and we just push that big domino down, and the rest of the liberty things just start to fall into place. What's the plan?
Chairman Frank?
Yeah, I think everybody just needs to make sure you continue to communicate to your district, because while there may be 20 Democrats that really think this is a good idea and want to vote for it, if you happen to live in one of those, communicate, try to give them courage. But there's also Republicans. I've heard a number of Republicans that voted for this say, nobody in my district is asking for this. Nobody in the district is asking for this. And I think part of it is like, you guys understand what that could mean to you. But something that doesn't exist is hard for people to say, I want this, when it doesn't exist right now, right? And so when you explain to parents what this is and the options that it gives them and the leverage that it gives them in negotiating their education situation with wherever they are, they understand it and get there, but you have to explain that. But so I don't care whether you have a Democrat, Republican, if you think they're strong for it or not, make sure your voice is heard for that, because some, even the Republicans, there's some that needs courage to understand that this is a big issue. Some are just voting based on fear now, right? Like, I mean, on the other side of it, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't agree with it, but they, you know, and certainly that is the case with the Democrat side.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny you keep saying that, though, that people say, I just don't hear about this in my district. There were at least 9 members who told us that on the floor of the House, said we don't hear about this in our district. And they heard about it and lost. There were a few that tried to claim they didn't hear about it in their district. They were so damn scared they didn't even run for re-election. It's wild.
Yeah, absolutely. This is all true. Okay. I'm going to open it up. Y'all are in here. I'm going to open it up to questions, because I know so many of you have great questions for our incredible representatives that are here on the stage today.
Thank you. Representative Kane touched on this a little bit. As we know, looking into the next session, a lot of people have talked about, we had the votes now, and so they think that's going to happen. But we know that leadership can pull strings and pull levers behind doors and kill things without ever letting it come up for a vote. So obviously, ideal would be we get a new leadership team that supports this, but in the event that we don't, what are some of the options that we can do to make sure this gets pushed through despite some of that leadership opposition?
I am not functioning right now in a world where there's we don't. So I'm not even making plans on that one at all. Like, I'm not leaving that door open where there's going to be new leadership. How does it get done? It gets done early. Like, the fear of things happening behind the scenes, that's why we have an early commitment. That's why it comes over as an emergency item and it gets done right away within the first 45 days. That's how you avoid that.
And I think
by not waiting.
And I think that's true for really all of the conservative priorities need to be done, need to be front loaded. We have always really, in the 12 years I've been in there, leadership has always honestly had this negotiating of, hey, which ones do y'all want to kill at the end? To me, we just front load all, nobody's leaving before the budget's done. They're just not, right? Like, because you want schools funded, you want all of that stuff. There's no reason we can't handle the priorities early, then spend all the rest of the time handling. There's a ton of other important stuff that's not considered red meat or blue. I don't know what y'all have, blue, whatever that is. Ours is red meat. What's your blue meat? Is there blue meat? That doesn't sound as good.
I'm kidding.
But you know what I mean? But there's a lot of issues that are pretty non-controversial. The water, roads, all of that stuff that doesn't get nearly as much talk. There's no reason that we can't do the priorities first, and certainly with this being number one, there's no reason we can't do the priorities first. Then we have the rest of session to do all of the other stuff that is also very important.
Yeah, your questions like that are almost I don't think of a better word, like an abused child or in a bad relationship. You just keep accepting it. Like, no, that's not how it has to be at all. It can be done earlier, and there's no opportunity to do that. And that's what we need to demand. We need to demand a change in leadership, demand that this bill get done early and timely.
My name is Andrew, and I'm a classical Christian educator starting a micro school just 2.5 miles from here. And so I'm kind of living the supply side right now of the issue, and also seeing, not only y'all mentioned the low reading scores, also math scores, but also civics education. And I wonder, I have two kind of questions, is how can we get the word out that an uneducated, future citizens that do not know how our government works would be a more risk to liberty than private schools taking ESAs? And then the other piece is, like, what can we do to address that supply where somebody says, well, we don't have a school in my neighborhood, so this couldn't benefit, our people. What more can we do about that? Do y'all hear that?
Well, the ESAs will clearly change the supply. It's hard to have demand. I've had people, because I have 14 counties, pretty rural area. Wichita Falls, that's not very rural, but then I've got a lot of rural areas, and they say, well, there's no private school options. Well, yeah, because how many people can afford $11,000 to send their kid. Like there's not a supply because there's not demand. If there's money available, the demand will follow. It is one of the reasons the implementation of this is really, really important. Really important, because it may be universal straight off the bat, and I hope it is and we'll work for it, but the implementation, there's not that many seats. It's going to take a while to make sure that you have, you can't just pop up a school immediately. And so it's going to take a while. We need to make sure those who are most in need, which is probably based on money, basically how much, their income, to make sure those are first come, first served, because those are the ones who have the least choice, and then it rolls in as supply catches up. As for your other question, we need to explain to the populace what liberty even means. There's a whole lot of people that don't know or care what that even means. And so that's something I think all of us can do in our culture. And I think also we probably ought to use words that make sense. A lot of times we use words that only make sense in rooms like this. We need to use words that make sense to liberals. When we're talking to them and trying to get them on our side, try to use their words that make sense to them and talk about freedom and, well, do you want, you know what I mean? That not to use the buzzwords that get applause in here if you're wanting to get people on the other side listening to you.
I've been using the word with my constituents because somebody said it to me who was a constituent, options. I can tell you this right now. If you go to any parent, anywhere in the state of Texas, you don't have to say what the issue is. Just say, would you like an option for your child? No one is going to say no. Go to any Democrat, would you like an option?
Yeah.
You don't know anything about politics. Would you like an option for what school your child should attend? Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes the first time, yes the second time. And we just have to think of it that way.
And I want to say words matter, because if you say the same thing but you say choices, people don't want choices. They do want options. Y'all may want choices, but choices can be scary and like, right? But options, that's why I kind of laugh every time somebody says school choice. I'm like, schools already have choices. We want parental choice, which is what I love about the parental
We did a
power.
forum with Dr. Johnson in Houston. We screened a film, Miss Virginia, and we talked about options. And majority Democrat room, African American participants, everyone raised their hand and said they want the option.
Yep.
They just want it. They just want an option. They may not use it, but they'd like one.
Mandy, we have time for one more question.
It's the shirt.
It's one thing to get ousted because you voted for something that was bad and your constituents didn't like it. It's another thing to get ousted because someone financed a campaign to run against you for something that your constituents, totally irrelevant to the way you actually voted. My question is other than banning taxpayer-funded lobbying, any of you have any thoughts on ways to improve campaign finance that would be more true to prevent things like that from happening to other good lawmakers?
Like the former elections.
No, in a similar vein, I was just thinking paycheck protection for teachers, just banning automatic union dues deductions for teachers would help kind of defund. Yeah, let's give us a dang applause, people. But the teachers' unions, those are the communists, let's just be honest. Even the members who are in it may not, nice lady that may live on my street that's a member of the teachers' union. You may not be a communist, but your organization is communist. You may not know that. Just message to that lady. That needs to stop, and I'm curious how defunding things like that would change how the legislature would act. But I haven't given much more thought on it.
To your point, I don't know if y'all know this, but in my race, first of all, I'm the daughter of a public school teacher. I have voted for every teacher pay raise, for the cost of living increase, so they can get the 13th check. Every time I've ever voted, I voted with teachers. It was the teachers union that campaigned the heaviest against me. They knocked doors. They would not endorse me anymore when every session I had been endorsed. Mailers against me. It was so bizarre. But then even when I filled out the questionnaire, I'm going to go ahead and say it, that union had changed. Instead of putting a priority on those issues that you normally see, labor, wages, work safety, the questionnaire asked that I believe in gender-affirming care. That's what the labor union questionnaire, the AFL-CIO questionnaire even, had that. So I'm like, how did that get over here? How is that a labor issue? And so since my position was already known, and then of course I answered the question honestly, I didn't get endorsed. And so they, to your point, I mean, they have the right to do what they're doing, but those kinds of issues now are it's so pervasive that it's on a union questionnaire.
Yeesh. Thank you all. Well, Chairman, before we wrap up, do you have anything?
Let's end on a high note.
Well, there's one nice guy that wouldn't get his question, but
Well, we can
we'll
stay
talk to him
here. We're
afterwards.
just, I was going to say, we'll
No,
all
it's great.
stay here and answer questions.
That's
It's
great.
just
No, appreciate
for
that.
anybody that needs to leave. Okay. Thank you all. It's been a full day of learning from experts, from parents. Thank you all for being here, a part of the Parent Empowerment Mission. We've locked arms. Please give a huge round of applause for these leaders, these warriors, these parents who are standing with us. Continue to fight, continue to show up, continue to support these great leaders, our great governor, lieutenant governor, everyone that is fighting for you up in that Capitol. Thank you again for joining us. And onward to victory.
Yeah.